Welcome to the Day Zero update for April 26, 2015. I'm Felico D'Anelfo.
I'm Patrick Mifflin.
I'm Brandon Perkins.
I'm Leigh Lamb.
And I'm Theresa Salmons.
And I think we need to catch up on the how long will it take Patrick to get Mortal Kombat 10 pool that we had last week.
Yeah, was it you that had Tuesday?
I had Tuesday. Apparently I won.
I had Tuesday.
And so did Brandon. So, yeah, I guess that leads us right into what we're playing, Pat, since you've now got it.
Yeah, I haven't actually started it yet. I'm going to try and get on that tomorrow. But what I've been playing by and large has been Final Fantasy Record Keeper, just because it's on my phone, it's with me all the time, and it just keeps getting better. They dropped the new bunch of dungeons. Also, Outrun 3D on the 3DS. It's pretty well established that I love Outrun in pretty much whatever form I can get it in, and this is just another example of that.
Is that an arcade conversion or a Mega Drive conversion?
It is.
Yeah.
But,
I
yeah,
imagine...
it's a really well-handled port, and it seems like Sega has just been picking up where Nintendo stuff left off in the 3D Classics line of games, and the fact that they included Outrun in that just it was a great choice, and it sure put a smile on my face, so I had to pick it up.
Yeah, well, I figure racing games and flying games would probably translate pretty well to the 3DS, so there's
Yeah.
that.
And the
It's actually
analog
remarkable
stick is
how much
quite
translates to the 3DS.
Yeah.
The old stuff, anyway.
ideal. Yeah. The analog isn't ideal, but it's serviceable. How about you, Phil? I'm guessing this is going to be the most predictable now playing that you've had yet.
Yeah. Defense Grid 2 and Mortal Kombat 10. I'm still enjoying MK10 immensely. Just hit level 50 factions, so I'm probably going to be, after this week's faction war, I'm probably going to jump to another one. So,
Which faction are you on?
right now I was doing White Lotus. I'll probably jump to Special Forces or whatever.
Cool.
Yeah, I usually try to get on the lowest ranked French faction. For some reason, I don't understand why, but I do. Yeah, those are the two that I've been playing. And, it's really remarkable how much just little things are included in Mortal Kombat 10 that just, it just makes the game amazing.
Yeah, Ed Boon and his team have always been really good at that, I think. But from what I've seen, this takes it to new levels, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, really done a great job. Brandon, how about you?
Well, first of all, Mortal Kombat 10.
Yeah.
I finished the story campaign yesterday.
Yep.
I'm not quite sure if it's leaving it for sequel bait or if this is setting us up for some sort of story DLC, because it ends kind of abruptly. But
yeah, it was
it's
it was an
definitely-
ending. Can't say it was a very good ending,
It was
but it was
an
an ending. Yeah, that was that.
MK9 was pretty much the same way.
Yeah.
well, the thing was, the story campaign MK9 was also longer.
True.
Quite a bit longer.
The
actually.
story camp, yeah. Because in that one, you literally played like every character in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not quite the case in this one.
Okay.
But it's still that I'm not knocking it though, because for what it does it very well.
Yeah.
Um,
I could have done without the QTEs though, but at least you don't get penalized for failing those.
That's good.
no. And of course, I'm still exploring the crypt. I just want to say I really freaking hate those jump scares.
Yeah.
I really do.
At least they'll occasionally throw some coins at you for those.
Yeah, if
Just
you
for putting
actually
up with
manage.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But like I said, the thing I loved about the crypt, is literally they set it up like kind of like a first-person dungeon crawler.
Yep.
you actually have to go out and find items to unlock other parts of the crypt. But it's still great. Let's see. Also, I went and picked up GTA 5 for my Xbox One, and gotta say, playing that thing in first person really does change up the whole game quite a bit.
It's actually made me interested in picking it up.
Yeah.
GTA 5, like Brandon said, in first person is it can be a really surreal and almost horrifying experience. Like, actually, no, I'm not saying that like to be hyperbolic. Like, Brandon, I'm sure you can comment on this. Like, have you stabbed somebody in first person?
No, but I have run someone over.
Go do it next to when you log in next time. Like, I'm serious. Like, it's almost uncomfortable. Like, GTA games have always been like really comical, and
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that I think GTA 5 has some flaws, but it is definitely a masterpiece. I have put more hours into that than I think any other open world game, because there's just so much stuff to do. There's so much detail. Rockstar obviously was very in love with what they were doing, but what's crazy is that first person. You can go into like the Vinewood Hills area and go in first person and just watch stuff. Like, that game, it's crazy the amount of detail they put in it. But when you go into first person and you actually start killing people, it's almost a little unnerving. Like, if you just run down the street and stab someone, like, and the screams, and like you can actually look in these people's faces right before you're going to attack them, it's actually pretty crazy. And I don't know. Rockstar does everything like really tongue in cheek, but watching that and doing that, I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this in first person.
I think I need to go pray.
So it pretty much turns it into a deconstruction of itself.
Almost, yeah. I mean, Pat, the thing about GTA, like, I know it's not really your kind of thing.
Well, okay, we'll get back to that in a minute, because it's true that I have not. Well, anyway, go ahead.
Well, I was say it's not really your kind of thing, but I also know that you're also a person that really can appreciate craftsmanship, and that is a superbly well-made game.
That's good.
And the story is good. It's very topical. Like, even just some of the, like, they have like, Brandon, have you listened to a lot of the radio stations?
Oh, hell, that's one of the things I always do with GTA.
Well, did you hear the
Because, I mean, you spend
about,
so much of the time in the game driving, so obviously you're listening to the radio a lot.
But did you hear that commercial about the first person shooter called The South?
Oh no.
Oh no.
I won't even remember.
I haven't heard that one yet. I do know. Yeah.
Yeah. Pat, YouTube it, and that'll make you play the game.
Yeah, but well, I mean, GTA games, they've always been topical, even all the way back to the first one. But this one in particular is absolutely merciless in the way it skewers just about everything on the planet.
See, that makes it
Even
more compelling
gamers.
to me than any of the gameplay elements, because this is something that I developed a taste for thanks to my mother. I've always really enjoyed satire.
Oh, and
if
I you like satire,
Rockstar
GTA 5
has
is your game.
a sense of satire that no other studio in the industry possesses. And if GTA 5 takes that to new levels, then that is more than enough to get me to at least look into it.
Yeah.
You should. For the next gen versions, it's worth it.
Yeah, if you're interested in any type of satire that has to do with like the economic downturn or just the overall slow death of the American dream, you're gonna love this game.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that too is that they have, talking about like the American dream, like, since they use 3 characters instead of 1, you actually get three different viewpoints where like the end goal sort of is the American dream, and like the perversion of that. Like the one of the main characters, Michael, is just this like mid-40s guy who hates his fucking life.
Yeah.
You have another guy that's a complete psychopath, and then you have
Trevor.
another guy. Yeah, Trevor's a complete psychopath, and then you have
Trevor.
another
I think
character.
is kind of Trevor. I think is kind of like their sort of caricature of the stereotypical GTA fan. Of sort of angry, balding man-child who just does whatever the hell he wants.
Trevor, the craziest part about Trevor is that Trevor is sort of like...
He's actually the most likable character of the three.
Well, he's almost like a walking id of the actual game. Like, when you... No, like, seriously, like what's happening in a lot of these newer games, particularly open world, is that you have characters that want to... Or you have companies that want to tell a story, but they aren't able to make that story mesh with the type of game that they're playing, or the kind of type of game that you are playing. And so Trevor is like the character that is the one that's going to go do all the stupid, crazy shit, run people over, do all that other stuff that you would do in that game. And so it's interesting to kind of look at that while you're playing it, because you switch. Like, you can switch pretty much the characters on the fly once you get them all together. It's a fantastic game, but yeah, especially if you like satire, it's one of those things where you're going through it and you're like, oh my god, like just so much stuff that they skewer. Like and the cool part is like when you go out into the country, the hip hop station disappears and you get like a public talk radio station that's like country, and then like one of the stations on it is called Bless Your Heart.
Oh, no. And my god!
Oh yeah!
No.
Yeah, the game is phenomenal, but like even if you're not into like even the mission structure or anything else like that, just being able to run around in that world, which is a incredible recreation of LA, is totally worth the price of admission.
Yeah,
nice.
Just for the record, though, those of you who don't know, Bless Your Heart in proper English translates to you dumb son of a bitch.
Exactly. At least here in the South.
Yeah. But also, other than that, kind of a one out of left field, Lollipop Chainsaw. And I started playing this because I found out that James Gunn, the writer and director for Guardians of the Galaxy, he actually wrote this game.
Did he really?
Was he sober?
Yeah,
when
he did.
this?
He wrote the screenplay. And okay, here's the thing about
one handled all that.
Yeah, no, James Gunn wrote the screenplay. Well, it's because before James Gunn did Guardians of the Galaxy, he worked with Trauma Films, so he did Tromeo and Juliet and all those really kind of trashy B-movie type stuff. But see, here's the thing: the lead character in this game is Juliet Starling. Now, do you know who voices Juliet Starling?
I do not.
Tara Strong. You know who else Tara Strong?
The Vegas odds on that probably okay.
Okay, Tara Strong, she is the patron saint of voice actors. She's very prolific, and anybody who's met her will tell you she is one of the sweetest human beings on the planet. And here's the thing. You know who else she currently voices?
Everyone?
Twilight Sparkle in My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. And she uses the exact same voice for Juliet Starling. And this is weird because when the game first starts, Juliet Starling is basically like mewling all sexy like a alley cat in heat or something. And the first thing I could think was, oh, Twilight, why? Just
yeah.
It's very uncomfortable. But it's not the best game in the world, but I definitely find it enjoyable. I love the first boss is just this, because the whole thing about the game is, there's like a zombie plague or whatever.
Right.
And so obviously she's running around with a chainsaw, cutting off a bunch of zombies' heads and everything. And the bosses in the game are basically like all members of like this zombie band, and they each play different instrument. And the first boss you play is the lead singer, and his voice is literally his weapon. So when he attacks you, he'll just take out his microphone and yell, "Cocksucker!" and then it'll actually manifest on the screen and attack you.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's weird. And apparently the last boss in this game is a giant fat zombie Elvis. So
This
that's
sounds
what
like
I've
a
been told.
digital manifestation of a fever dream.
Yeah. And also, I didn't have this on the notes. I finished the second episode of Life is Strange
Right.
the other day.
Still liking it?
Oh, yeah. And let me tell you, it gets really emotionally intense towards the end of it.
That's what I've heard.
I'm not going to do too much spoilers, but one of the characters in this, who is a friend of the character you play, attempts suicide. And one of the things you try to do before the end of the game is try and talk her out of it. And if it succeeds,
Stuff happens.
if you succeed, stuff happens. If you don't succeed, the game still keeps going.
Yeah.
And
So what a
it's not
nonlinear
pretty.
narrative means.
Yeah.
yeah, and I believe the next episode is supposed to come out next month, and I'm eagerly anticipating it.
Cool.
Yeah,
So that's what I
stuff
played.
I've been reading is that entire story arc is really sticking with people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like it is having a profound effect on a lot of the people who are playing it, and yeah,
It's a really good example of how, how you can do a really impactful game with a very small budget.
yes.
Because this game is very obviously done on as a passion project, done on a small budget, and obviously the graphics aren't as clear as they could be, and obviously because the game is done in France, the lip syncing is kind of off, but it still manages to be this really emotionally powerful story.
Cool.
But that's what I did.
All right. Theresa, kind of a slow week.
Yeah, kind of a slow week. Been playing Mario Kart 8. Oh, well, of course I was playing Civ as well. Again, goes without saying.
Well, Civ is kind of your defense grid.
Yeah.
It is. It
Just
is.
kind of take it for granted that you're playing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always going to be played in some form or another. But yeah, I was thinking about picking up A Link Between Worlds and finishing that one off. So maybe next week I'll have more to say about that.
Cool. Did you get the season pass for Mario Kart 8? Because
Hell yeah, I did.
the back half of it did drop.
Yep,
Days
and
ago.
I'm wondering why the police didn't get called when I found KK Slider in the Animal Crossing track.
It would have been appropriate if they'd actually had KK Ryder as one of the playable characters.
Unfortunately.
Oh, and there's also some Easter eggs with KK Slider as well.
Nice.
So, yeah, people who want to go check him out, he's got something going on there. So won't spoil it.
Yeah.
Leigh?
Well, not too much different from before. I'm playing the Old Republic, which Brandon, I sent you a referral link. I would suggest.
Yep,
really
already got it.
Use
Already
that.
got it taken care of.
Okay, yeah, use that before really getting into the game. And the reason I also want to mention this to you is that it might be worth it for you. I would wait until May 4th. They're going to be dropping a so last year they released an expansion called Shadow of Revan, which I know you said you were interested in because of the Revan character and all that. Starting on May 4th, subscribers to the game basically get a boost that gives them 12 times the XP bonus when you're doing class quests. So basically what that does is that lets you play through pretty much all, because like the way the game is set up is you just have your planetary quests, which are just, you know, your random run-of-the-mill MMO quests, and then you have your actual class quest, which, you know, goes back to the type of character that you chose to play, and each one of those has, you know, an individual story, and each one of them are very different. So with what I would suggest you do if you really kind of want to see it is just subscribe for 1 month to see how you like it, and that when you subscribe you'll get that 12 times XP bonus, and you can literally probably get a class quest for one character done in about 15 to 20 hours depending on how you actually play, and you can still do the regular quests on the way, but it'll sort of get your toes wet, and that will also let you get to the end game if you want to see the actual battle with Revan and everything else like that. And it's been interesting because the community has really been clamoring for that bonus ever since they did it. And originally when it was done, like me and my wife didn't take advantage of it because they dropped Shadow of Revan and then the 12 times XP boost right before the expansion for WoW came out, Warlords of Draenor, and we were heavy into WoW at the time, so we were like, yeah, whatever, fuck you, Star Wars. And now that we got bored of WoW, so we jumped back into Star Wars, and really the sticking point for this game, the thing that makes it so great, it really is those stories. Everything else is just kind of okay. But I would highly suggest that if anybody is curious about the game and seeing the stories, literally after May 4th, just subscribe. It costs $15. The game is free. But you're essentially, so look at it as you like paying $15 for that 1 month, and you can go through and play with it and see your class stories and get a feel for how the game plays. Because it's worth it. If any of you guys like BioWare's stories, or if any of you are fans of Knights of the Old Republic or even Mass Effect to a certain extent, it's worth playing any of these characters and any of the stories. They're very, very cool. So we've been doing that, and then but I've slowed down leveling though because I know the 12 times XP is coming, and I'm like, otherwise I'm just wasting time. So I'm just gonna wait till May the 4th. But I've been doing that. I just recently started playing the Game of Thrones game by Telltale, just because, you know, we're back in my house. We're big Game of Thrones fans, and it's interesting. I don't think it's as enjoyable as The Walking Dead was, which I thought was fantastic. But man, Telltale games all, like, I don't know what it is, if it's just their engines or what. They are always like janky as fuck.
It's definitely the engines. Yeah,
I wish
they use the same engine for every one of them.
Yeah, like the Game of Thrones game actually looks pretty cool. Like the recreations of characters that are in the game they're okay, but like they actually did a lot with the facial animation. Like there's a point where you end up getting into an interrogation and Cersei is interrogating you, and they captured Lena Headey's like scowl that she does where she lifts one of her eyebrows up. Like it's just perfect, right? But same thing, like when you're walking around, everybody's kind of like stuttering and moving forward, and then all of a sudden that cleans up and it's like, oh wow, this is animated really well. Then it goes back to sucking again, and you know, I don't know. But I got through what?
You should see what they've been doing to those characters on Source Filmmaker.
I don't even want to know. I mean, it's cool so far. I'm curious to see where it goes, simply because the character that you play belongs to a house that exists in the lore, but it doesn't. They're never really explored. So that's been interesting, and I've been playing it. And my wife actually heard me playing it the other night, and she was upstairs, and she actually called down to me and she goes, "What are you watching?" Because it sounded like the TV show. So I'm going through that. I'm going to see how that goes.
Didn't they get all the actors to do the voice acting?
If they did, or rather if they didn't, they got people that did pretty good copies. So, which is, you know, like the guy that does Tyrion, which is, you know, Peter Dinklage. If the copy that they got to do his voice, if it's not him,
No, it is him.
is fantastic. It is him?
Yeah.
Well, I wish that's funny because he was terrible in Destiny. Anyway, whatever. So it's obviously not, being a character in a video game. It's whatever script he got. It seems to be very well written. Particularly the interrogation scene with Cersei really feels like what you see on the show and like all the crazy stuff that happens on King's Landing or in King's Landing. So I thought that was cool. And between that, I've just been playing Shovel Knight because it just came out on Vita, and of course everybody already knows that. Well, I know it's great. I know everybody knows it's great. I was fascinated though. I was reading up on the game, and I didn't know this, but apparently the guys that programmed it, with the exception of two colors, the color palette that they used was something that the NES would use, with the exception of two gradients. That was it. And there's something so cool about that because, like I said, we were talking about before we started the show. We're going through kind of like a retro thing at my house. So playing a new game that still kind of mimics the old like palette of the NES is just a trip.
Yeah.
So and then the only other thing,
I think that's a lot of where we're going as an industry too.
Yeah,
I would expect a lot more of that moving forward.
Yeah, it's just a really interesting and cool stylistic choice. So we're really happy about that. And the only thing I didn't list on the show notes that I am playing is that I just recently started playing Double Dragon 2 with my kid, the NES one.
Oh dear!
Oh Lord!
Yeah.
Get ready for a lot of broken controllers and angry swearing.
We're good. Although he's growing up in that generation where everything's easy, so. We get to that part where like there's those two moving elevators and you basically have to jump over a pit and then go in another door. And even like mechanics of like the helicopter mission where I was like, Nathan, stay away from the door. Otherwise you're gonna get sucked out. Like if you get punched and you get knocked over, you're dead. And then all of a sudden, you get to the end, no continues. What is this? Like
Yeah.
So it's interesting seeing a new generation play this old stuff.
Yeah. You haven't gotten to the disappearing platform yet, so.
Yeah, just like they get towards the end of the game when the disappearing platforms. Oh man, that's gonna.
Oh no, I remember all that. I mean, I have the original NES cart downstairs, but it's gonna be great to watch him do it. Yeah.
Just sit back and
grab your popcorn and watch the show.
Well, I almost feel like an asshole father sometimes because he'll be like, "Daddy, can you beat this for me?" I'm like, "No, you got to earn it, son."
Yep.
You got to earn it.
Tough love. You're building character.
Right, exactly. Like Calvin's dad from Calvin and Hobbes. Except with video games instead of yard work.
Yeah.
Which makes it automatically better.
Give him Battletoads. That'll.
Oh, fuck.
Oh. I don't know.
Battletoads or the SNES port of Space Ace.
Oh, no.
The next one that's on our list is because I was talking about before the show. We got one of those Retrons, so we're gonna be loading up Contra 3.
Nice.
We're gonna be doing Super Double Dragon, a lot of that stuff. Like, that's one thing that I definitely miss about old school gaming is co-op. I mean, I have so many memories as a kid of playing things with my friends, whether it was in the arcades or whether it was on consoles, just where you could go through and just do something together. And I felt like the Xbox 360, particularly with arcade games, really kind of captured that again. And I haven't really encountered anything this generation so far that makes me feel that way. So we're just going to go ahead and supplement it. Yeah. Well, yeah, I heard about that one, but this is more like, I care. It's going to sound strange, but like I feel like in order for him to appreciate the way that a lot of these games work, you kind of have to start from the beginning. I've talked with Pat a lot about like the language of games and how you're taught to play things. And it's interesting to watch him play old stuff because nothing new that he plays kind of requires the same sort of skill set.
Yeah.
And then plus being a fighting game player, my natural inclination is to find whatever broken space I can get into and then just exploit the hell out of it. like I'll never forget. Years and years and years ago, back when we were all doing Game Addicts,
Yeah.
The first Splinter Cell came out, and I remember I showed Los how to sneak through that game without getting caught at all. Because what happened is in the animation set, if you hold forward, if you let go of forward before Sam's foot hits the ground, you never make any noise.
Hold
so you
on,
can just
we're-
tap, 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 and sneak everywhere. And that's just how I play games.
Yeah.
So it's like finding remember the original Double Dragon, the elbow?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I was
Super
playing.
broken.
That was
I was
so
playing
broken.
I was playing. So we switched from doing Double Dragon 2 at one point, and I said, "Do you want to see the original?" And he said, "Yeah." And so we played the Xbox 360 port, and he was in there trying to punch and kick and do all that, and he's grabbing people and just really trying his best. Whereas I would stand over a body and I'd throw that elbow out the minute I saw them start to get up, and he was just like, "Dad, all you're doing is just elbowing left and right." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm not getting hit." Yep. So and so that's what's interesting too, because it felt like the only way to get through those games was because the enemies always had an advantage. So any advantage you have to press. Whereas I don't think a lot of new games work that way. So it's gonna be really fun when we get, because he wants Smash Brothers for his birthday. So I'm gonna get that, and that's probably gonna rip our family apart. Because I play with no mercy. And my wife will be playing it too, so I'll probably be sleeping on the couch a few nights.
Yeah.
Well, just remember, if you ever need a character witness in court,
Right?
Yeah.
So on to the news.
Yeah, quick one.
Um,
Following up from last week where we talked about Twilight Princess potentially coming to the 3DS. No,
that's been
not
debunked.
happening. Nope.
nope.
That's just one of the things with breaking news in the game industry. Sometimes, it'll it'll look legit, it'll sound legit, but
Sometimes we get trolled.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
So
for those of you who were
Too,
looking
because
forward to it.
that's one of those games that if it had a better control scheme, I would just be all about.
it would really be a good fit on the 3DS.
Oh, they'll probably eventually end up doing it, just not right now, apparently.
Yeah, and maybe on the Wii U instead.
Yeah.
Especially.
Yeah,
since
but if they
there's
do
gonna be
that, hopefully they'll do the GameCube version, because Waggle is terrible.
Yes.
It's the worst thing they ever did.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
figure anything that they make for the Wii U would be built toward the gamepad, so I wouldn't worry
Yeah.
too much about that. So we just wanted to touch on that before we get into the rest of the show, basically. Good release week for RPG fans. We've got Omega Quintet coming to the PS4 from Galapagos RPG, which is a label under the NIS company. Basically something they put together a couple years ago to make JRPGs with no regard for so-called broader audiences that a lot of people are figuring out aren't really there anyway.
Yeah.
So this is the same studio that cranked out Fairy Fencer F last year, and Omega Quintet's looking really good, and I'm really happy to see it coming up so soon. I didn't expect it until later on in the year, and then we're getting the PC version of Ys 6 thanks to Exceed Games. They're adding some difficulty settings to it. Stuff that probably should have been in the PS2 and PSP versions of the game that came out years ago. And we're getting a completely new Exceed translation of the game. So, yeah, I'll look forward to that. It comes out Tuesday for, I believe, $20 on Steam. And it really is a great game. I mean, Ys has been in a sort of just, it's hit a renaissance of sorts in recent years, and Ys 6 is the game that started that. This is the game that has had Falcom going back and redeveloping some of the older installments in that image. And so I highly recommend it to anyone who loves action RPGs. Give this one a look when it comes out Tuesday, because you won't be disappointed.
Yep. And won't take a very high-end PC to run it either, so...
No, it won't. It was, I believe, 2003, 2004, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Good times.
Yeah.
You know, it's fascinating to me, and you guys will hear me get into this probably every single time that we talk, but it is absolutely fascinating to me that the lack of backward compatibility in a lot of our consoles now is sort of being rendered as a non-issue to anybody that even has a remotely functional PC. And you know, we'll I'm sure at some point we'll get on the topic of emulation, and you guys can hear me rant about that. But
and I'm looking forward to it.
This is just one of those things, man. Like it is important, I think, to have these things available for people that want to play them, people that want, and you need to have it in a form where people can buy them, because this is not the video game. You know, we always go back to the stuff about the 90s, but we are not in the video game industry of the 90s. And if people want access to something,
they'll get it.
They'll get it. So, you know, it's really sort of about trying to figure out where that line is where you can still monetize it. Because, I think for the majority of gamers out there, yeah, there's going to be some shitbags that if they can get anything free that they will. But I think most people understand, like, you know, if I purchase this thing or if I do this thing, I want to support the people that are making it, particularly with these more niche titles. It's really important to kind of lend that support.
And thereby, lo and behold, increasing your odds of getting more.
Exactly, and it's all cumulative. But what's so frustrating about it is that, particularly with Japanese companies, is they seem completely tone deaf to the idea that people still want these things. I mean, we saw how difficult it was to get Suikoden 2 put on PSN, and people have been clamoring for it for years. Nintendo's own ineptness when it comes to the virtual console is another thing. Like, I know they're super conservative, I know they don't want to devalue their titles or anything else like that, but if there was ever a time where they need to capitalize on their back catalog and truly take advantage of the IP that they have, it's been this generation, because the Wii U has been a failure. And like right now, like my kid and my wife are downstairs playing Mario Brothers on the Wii U. We bought a Retron because there's not all the games that I own are not available for repurchase on the Wii U in virtual console form. You know, they trickle out like 2 games every 6 months, it seems like. It's ridiculous. Like, they have such a huge back catalog that could fill the hole of what they're missing now. And nobody can tell me re-releases don't make any money, especially when you look at the first half of this generation so far for newer consoles has just been re-releasing the shit from last generation with a better frame rate. Yeah. And Nintendo, more than any other company, has built-in nostalgia. My wife has never owned a console, and she never will own one. But she's downstairs playing Mario Brothers right now because she played it as a kid, just like everybody else did. And that could be the gateway for people like her to go, oh man, because like I have Super Mario World down there, and I know eventually she's going to play that, and she's going to be blown away, like, holy shit, this is awesome. And then I have
that's still my favorite game in the series too.
Mine too. And then that can go into Yoshi's Island, and then that can lead into Mario 64 and all this other stuff. And so much of that they haven't capitalized on about what made them great. They don't even release that stuff, and I can't fathom why they don't, except they're inept or they simply don't know the demand is there. Look at what happened with Earthbound. I remember reading an interview where the guy was like, we didn't know people really wanted this. Like, well, how do you not know that?
Well, look at Suikoden again with Konami. That was news to them that the series was so popular.
Right.
How is that even possible?
Exactly. It's crazy. And the thing is, but see, then I also wonder if, when we're talking about popularity, if popular to these companies means something completely different in the context of how many copies it can sell. Like,
Yeah.
does popular now
We've
mean
talked
6
about
million
that on the show
copies?
too.
Yeah, like what does that mean? So, part of me wonders if that's part of the problem too. They're like, oh, well, there's 500,000 people that would buy this. That's not enough. But then at the same time, we're also sitting here talking about this is a ROM dump.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not having it now. Now, to Nintendo's credit, at least with the stuff that they put on Virtual Console, they do have to make it work for the gamepad. They have put in stuff like save states and things like that. Their emulation is incredible. They just need to do more of it. But for something like PSN, that compatibility is still there. All they have to, like, especially if you put it on for something like the PS3 or the Vita, there are people that are going to buy this stuff, and all you guys have to do is stop being lazy and put the ROM dump out there. Hell, I think Nintendo fans would be happy if they just got ROM dumps.
Yeah.
Forget all the extra bells and whistles. Just make sure it works on the gamepad. And I can't fathom why these companies won't do it, especially when you see on the PC side of it, so many games are coming out now at a great price point, and they're selling.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder too if the larger developers just aren't getting it. I know it seems like when we get polled as consumers, it's not always, the big guys who are asking, what do you want? What do you want to see? They don't seem to have embraced the interactivity that they can have with their money base. I mean, we're the ones giving them money. It's so easy for them to find out what we want. Why aren't all of them doing this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wonder if part of it is an analytics issue. Like maybe they don't have a way to parse that data because, some people will be like, oh, we'll just go to Twitter. Like, well, Twitter's also a cesspool depending on where you go. So, maybe they just don't have someone in their group that's paying attention that goes, look, people want this. And to be fair, yes, they can talk to us. Yes, they can get data. But at the same time, there are a lot of people that are like, hell yeah, I would like this thing, whatever, insert game here. But I also distinctly remember, I guess, sort of to play devil's advocate to my own point, and to Theresa's, I remember that there were people that I would see on NeoGAF that were like seriously like Jason Schreier from Kotaku has been one of the people beating the drum for years about getting Konami to put Suikoden 2 out. And I remember when they finally did it, there was an error on the on PSN for I think like the first 2 hours that the game was out, and you could get Suikoden 2 for the same price as Suikoden 1, which was $6.99. Yeah. And that was a mistake. It was supposed to be $9.99, and there were people on the thread that were like, "Oh, it's not $10, or it's $10 instead of $7. I'll pass." And if you're like, if $3 is going to stop you from playing something that is really, really quality, like how do we know the people that basically balked at the additional $3, even though everyone knew that was what the price should have been anyway? I wonder if those people maybe these companies don't feel like that feedback is legit because they do have the mechanism to get that info, but is it corresponding with what they think the sales should be, or are they talking to people that be like, hell yeah, I'll buy that, and then the minute it's out, they're not going to do anything, and they're going to wait for a sale?
Yeah, well, a lot of people talk, going to say they're going to do something, but when it actually comes time to, they just don't. So,
but I also feel like, and we can move on after this because I don't want to drag this out. But I also feel like this is sort of a self-inflicted wound on the part of the video game industry because there's such a deluge of content now, and particularly with models like PS Plus and to a certain extent games with gold, and then you take a look at Steam. I think people sort of have this built-in idea as well that anything old shouldn't be past a certain price point, and I think that's valid to a certain extent. But I think they look at it based on price alone rather than like the value of the content. Like if these are people that are, theoretically, I would think the people that are also balking at this, are the same people that will still go out and buy stuff day one and will still buy season passes and everything else like that. So where's the disconnect? And I think that's something that these companies need to figure out. And I think Steam is sort of the anti-platform for that, because people will buy it at that price point. And then you also know, for the people that won't buy it at that price point, there will inevitably be a Steam sale, and they'll still get it. But it seems like, to me, at least anecdotally, PC gamers are a lot more willing to try that stuff out than I think console gamers, over like a $3 difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably right.
But I do still think that there's that element of just, I guess, disengaged accountants that are really selling the hell out of the idea that anything short of 3 million sales is abject failure.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely part of the problem. I mean, the goalposts as far as sales have been moved so far. I mean, God, you guys remember what it was like in PlayStation era? What was it? If a game sold, what was the threshold for greatest hits? Was it like
500,000?
500,000? Yeah.
That's what I think anyway. I'm not positive, but
yeah, it was either 500. I want to say it was 500,000. I'll look that up later. But yeah, look, like that, a game that sold 500,000 copies now would just be an abject failure. And of course, we have budgets and things like that to consider. But a game like Ease, if it sells 500,000, that's got to be a success, right?
Yeah.
And it has to be, because Falcom and all these guys and Xseed are able to, and Atlas are able to make that money and still put out product that's not going to be a 6 million seller. So they obviously don't have the asshole accountants.
Yeah.
Well, also, don't forget, back in the old PlayStation day, the one of the things about, games in the 90s was the fact that you could, you had like your A games and you had your B games. You had the games that came out from the big developers, but you also had the smaller ones that would come out on the side, and, those could become the big sleeper hits.
Well, and that's what's happening now with the indie scene. I mean, the indie scene has filled that gap that disappeared in the last generation. So, because I'm sure the guys that did Axiom Verge, if he sells 500,000 copies, he's gonna be ecstatic.
Yeah,
I think he did.
So,
especially at $20 a pop.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Moving on to our stories of the week. A quick one. 10 Guitar Hero live songs have been revealed. I know I'm getting old because I only recognize one of them.
I've never heard. Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah.
Same here.
Oh, I'm so glad it wasn't just me.
Well, I am pleased to see Alter Bridge on there, so that's good.
Yeah.
What were the titles? I haven't looked.
Let's see. Pull that up.
Yeah, Phil's going to get the tab.
They don't have it listed, but I thought in the trailer they had that song from the Black Keys, and I don't see it on the list.
Yeah,
it'll be there, I'm sure.
Additional. Yeah, you have, let's see. Sing by Ed Sheeran. Best Day of My Life by American Authors. What Doesn't Kill You.
Well, that's a stupid band name.
Yeah, What Doesn't Kill You by Jake Bugg. Don't Owe You a Thing by Gary Clark Jr. Let's see here.
Yeah, that's enough. I don't know who those people are.
Yeah. The only one I recognized was Cry of Achilles by Alter Bridge, and that's an amazing song, and you should listen to it.
We got Bands of Skulls, of Monsters and Men, Biffy Clyro, Blitz Kids, and The War on Drugs. And
we're old, I guess. Yeah.
We're old.
And the Black Keys
They
song
need to get
on
some
there,
fucking credence.
We may be old, but we got money to buy games, and they probably don't.
Yeah.
The Black Keys song that's on there, I basically recognized as that song from MLB 12, the show.
Yeah. So there's that. Still,
which was a fantastic use for it, don't get me wrong.
At least, more info is starting to come out on that game. And apparently there will be, between the campaign songs and the GHTV songs, there's going to be hundreds of them that you can play straight away. So that's kind of ambitious.
Yeah.
Let's just hope it's not, Top Gear ambitious but rubbish.
Epic fail.
Yeah.
So
Next up.
back to a little bit of an RPG block that it's kind of become a tradition on this show. Gaijin Works active again this week, announcing that Class of Heroes 3 and Summon Night 5 for the PSP are on the way. Yes, you heard me correctly. That is PSP. They are going to be polling for people who want to buy physical copies of those games. Vic says toward late May, early June. And then if they get the kind of demand that they're looking for, especially for Summon Night 5, it seems. It sounds to me like if Summon Night 5 in particular does well, then that'll open all kinds of doors for them. Mm-hmm. But the success of those games will definitely make a lot possible.
What happened to Clash of Heroes 2?
What do you mean?
I seem to have... I ordered it. I don't know where it is.
Oh, I thought you ordered... I got your order and...
Oh, yeah. Stuff happened.
You bought a copy that I have. It's still here.
Okay, you've got it.
I was waiting to get a PSP for you to play it on. And then stuff happened with my living situation and...
Step 3, profit.
But, yeah. But I still have it. It's here.
Okay.
It's a fun game. I got the digital copy. You'll like it, Phil, if you ever get it.
Yeah, and here's the thing with Gaijin Works physical copies. When you, like with Class of Heroes 3 and Summon Night 5, if they pull enough to get physical copies out, and you pre-order them, you will get a digital copy with it, so you don't have to bust open your physical copy. That's something that Vic has been kind of emphatic about, and he's made a point to say that pretty much anyone still making PSP games could do this, but they're choosing not to. So
really,
yeah. If you go to the Gaijin Works forums, he talks about this a lot.
Yeah,
and yeah, Sony has not slammed the door on PSP UMD copies of games whatsoever. It's just that publishers are choosing to go all digital with it from here on, probably as a mix of the fact that GameStop and Best Buy and those companies aren't carrying PSP games in their stores anymore.
For now.
Nope.
And just the fact that it's probably a lot easier to just publish digitally.
Yeah.
So...
it's good to see Gaijin Works still plugging away at it.
Yeah. But yeah, if you go to the thread that's pretty much dominating their message boards right now, it just says Sticky, Summon Night 5, and Class of Heroes 3 announcement thread. It's pretty much an open Q&A with Vic right now. And yeah, he talks a lot about the current PSP production situation and just...
I'm just amazed that the disc manufacturing stuff is still going.
Yeah. There's a lot of good stuff about, like I said, the production situation, stuff that that they're trying to license, and can actually talk about, at least subtly. It's a really good discussion. And hold on a second, I'm going to get the link for you guys. So there's that. And if you're interested in seeing what they're doing, I highly recommend checking that out.
Cool.
So, moving on from that, a little bit of pre-E3 news. Square Enix has booked an E3 press conference for Tuesday morning that week.
Yeah. In Nintendo's time slot.
Yeah. Either they completely spaced it, or they're assuming that there's not going to be a lot of crossover between their audience and Nintendo's, and that it's not going to be hard for anyone to choose.
Yeah.
Hopefully somebody budges, because I want to see them both.
Yeah, well, Nintendo's you can rewatch, immediately.
Yeah.
And for the journalists that are going to be in LA, if the choice is a live conference that's from Square Enix or watching Nintendo Direct, I think they're going to go.
Kind of takes precedence.
Yeah.
Any predictions?
Well, the fact that they're going to have a conference at all tells me that they've got a lot on the plate this year.
I think they're going to finally do something with the Chrono brand.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see that.
We'll probably get we might finally get definitive release dates for Final Fantasy 15 and Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see that either.
I'd also like to see an announcement for Final Fantasy 16, just kind of a preliminary thing. Announce Hiroyuki Ito at the helm, and basically imply that the entire game is going to have a whole sense of coming home.
Well,
because that would be very consistent with everything that Yosuke Matsuda has stood for since he took over the company last year.
All I want two things. I want Dragon Quest VII for the 3DS.
Entirely possible.
I want that so bad. I will shank someone's mother in front of them, if that will help.
If that will help.
All Square has to do is call me, give me a laundry list, tell me what they want done. We'll work it out. And I want to see a release, not even a release date, just announce it. What system Dragon Quest 11 is going to come on? And if it's the PS4, I'm going to be fully erect. I'm just telling you right now. I want an HD Dragon Quest so bad, and I know it's just not something that does that well in America. But I hope that Square again. I mean, they seem so surprised by Bravely Default doing well. And there's something like we've talked about. I think they are a little bit now more tapped in with their audience and really understand you have people here that want this stuff pretty bad. They're not going to be the 6 million people that, are going to buy Dragon Quest in Japan. But it should be enough. And I think Square, after the whole Final Fantasy 13 debacle, realized that they need things to sell regardless, whether they're huge titles or whether they're stuff that pushes 500,000 copies.
How did 13 do at the end of the day?
I know I don't know if it was total, but I think it was around 6 million. But it was so universally derided.
Yeah.
And it was sort of it was a poster child for mismanagement. I mean, the reason they were able to do 13.2 and then Lightning Returns is because they had so many assets left over from the initial Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah.
So, but I think that Square has realized that they need the big titles to sell. They need things to sell, middle ground, and then even lower end stuff. Because what was it? Between Europe and America, Dragon Quest 7 sold, or not Dragon Quest 7, Dragon Quest 9, I think did 1.2 or 1.3 million copies. And that's nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
Nope.
And I think, there's a group of people that would be willing to kind of do, I would think that at least for them, since the game's already done and they just need to do a translation, I think that even getting, 750,000 copies, especially when they were so crazy that Bravely Default did 400,000. I think that would be, that's something that they need. So, and they seem to be okay with the idea of bringing certain things over because they're bringing over, Dragon Quest Heroes, and that's certainly more niche than a real Dragon Quest title, and they're bringing that over for the PS4. So, I'm hoping that they've turned that ship around and maybe they'll finally realize, we do have a brand that is loved. Let's try and branch it out. Because the biggest problem with Dragon Quest IX simply was that Dragon Quest IX with its street tag ability and everything else of that was built, around Japan, which obviously that's where it was created. But if that game had the ability in it to tag people via Wi-Fi, they would have sold a lot more. It was just based on what the DS could and could not do, and they don't have that issue now with any of these systems. I think they realize how connected everything is. I think that's why we're getting that Dragon Quest Heroes game, and I hope they turn around and do the same thing for 7, because 7 is a great game. It's long, but it's I know it's kind of like the black sheep of that series. But the 3DS is the perfect platform to play it on, and I hope they do it. I don't even care about Final Fantasy anymore. Just give me Dragon Quest, because I know that they're not going to fuck it up. So that's I feel like with gaming now, I'm almost like how like when people go to McDonald's, they're like, the food's not even that good, but at least it's consistent. Like I almost feel like that's what I want out of gaming now. Like I don't need you to try and reinvent the wheel 300 damn times. Just give me something that I know that I want to play. And that's how I feel about like stuff like Dragon Quest, because they change just enough to give you something new, but it's still the same type of formula and it's still fun. So just give it to me. And like I said, if somebody from Square Enix ever listens, just call me. We'll work it out. Let me know. Need to hide some bodies or something. I got you.
Okay.
We need to.
It strikes me as really odd that Square Enix seems to be so protective of the look, the play style, the identity of the Dragon Quest series, when they've been so cavalier about all those elements in Final Fantasy.
Or really any of their other properties.
Yeah. But considering that those are the two big franchises that the companies build upon, it's just a much more, I guess, blatant disconnect to notice. But hopefully,
I also think that to that point, Pat, I think a big difference now. I think especially with Square owning as IDOS.
Yeah,
I think that they.
Europe.
Yeah, I think that they realize that there is a portion of the American market. Like, I think that was the big hurdle for this generation with a lot of Japanese companies. They didn't really know how to appeal to the American market. But at the same time, the games that got them fans in America, they really kind of stopped making. So I think Square is in an interesting place. Square Enix is in an interesting place because they do have a subsidiary essentially that is strictly an American, or rather a Western developer. And I would not be surprised if some of their management has definitely told them, like, look, you bring this stuff here, it's going to do well. And I hope that they are going to at least, interact with the management, with companies like IDOS, because those people obviously seem to have their fingers on the pulse of what their fans want, maybe more than Square Enix does, and maybe that can at least be relayed. And I think that is sort of happening, along with the fact that the company has outright reached out to people and been like, tell us what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm quite good with that lately.
Yeah.
So a bit of random news. The screensavers is coming back.
Yeah.
If any of you actually know what that is, points for you guys.
Yeah. Leo Laporte.
Yeah. Announced last week the show is going to be coming back. Actually, I think the first episode
you know what it means?
recorded yesterday, so it might be out already.
Yeah, the only buzzkill there is that it's going to be on a weekly format instead of a nightly like the original, but given everything that goes on at TWIT and all the different shows that Leo himself is involved in, it's no real surprise, and it's hard to be too upset about it. We're getting the show back.
Yeah, we're getting the show back, and we got a really good crew on there too.
Pretty much all of the people.
Yeah.
Just
well,
anyone he could get a hold of.
Yeah, well, he managed to get Kate back in. So
wait, when I first heard about that, she was just going to make occasional appearances.
Yeah,
Is
she will
she
be
there now, or
not full time, but she will be, as a guest,
okay,
at least.
cool.
So there's that.
Yeah, this is basically the show that got me really into things like, well, just the ins and outs of computers. I'd done some work on computers in the past prior to that show going on the air, but I'd never done my own computer build. I'd never really messed around with Windows or anything, like the registry or all the different things you can do with it. This is the show that pretty much, brought me into things like that altogether.
Yeah, 'cause they explained it in a way that was, it was easily approachable, but they didn't treat you like an idiot either. So, it has a very. This is also, I probably shouldn't say this, but this was also the show that I wanted to watch so badly I hacked American Satellite up here in Canada to get it.
Well, that's just dedication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've been telling you folks, we're still in the 90s.
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't think that's rhetoric anymore. I mean,
no, I think we're there.
We've actually physically gone back to 1998, and that's just kind of where we're chilling out now.
Yeah.
Could we just bring the music back, the quality of music that we had then?
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, Megadeth does have a new lineup.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That album is going to be brutal.
We'll have to wait and see.
Brutal. So,
It won't be those.
moving on from that, GameStop, almost on the heels of them phasing out all of their PlayStation 2 and PSP product, have now made the announcement that their brick-and-mortar stores are going to deal in legacy product.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting. I think they're starting with the test market right now to see how that does.
Understandable.
But they're going to be doing, we're talking actual legacy systems here, like Genesis, SNES, N64.
Yeah, not just a
Dreamcast.
generation or two back.
Yeah.
Well, the only catch with that is that if they go through with this, they'll only be selling them online because they probably don't have the space to stock the older systems.
I was going to say...
Yeah, that's what I read.
I
Yeah.
don't frequent a lot of GameStops, just primarily the one that's across the street from me. But if that's an indication of what other GameStops are like, they are going to need bigger locations.
No, the majority of GameStops are small. I mean, I remember like at my local one, just from the amount of, because they're in a really high traffic area, the majority of the stuff that they take in, they actually end up, like if they run out of space, they will actually store stuff in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the room. The only big location that I've been to that's in my area, because it seems like all the other ones keep getting smaller. The only big one in my location is at the mall near me, and even then, it's only 50% bigger than the normal stores that I go in. And I mean, the normal stores that we see here, I mean, they're tiny. There's maybe, I don't know, 70 feet from the door to the back wall.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're gonna. It sounds like. Well, I think there's a good thing and there's a bad thing. GameStop. This is obviously something that they're doing, I think, because as we have the rise of more digital stuff, they have to replace a revenue stream. Now, I think it's very possible in the future that we will end up with consoles that do end up being eventually 100% digital. But I still think we're a good 10 years away from that because there's logistical issues like data caps and everything else like that to consider.
And just backlash.
Yeah. But I do think that they're also sitting here really trying to figure out, like, how can we make this money? And I don't know if you guys really pay attention to the retro market like I do. There is a huge group of people now that are collecting stuff like Genesis, Super Nintendo, and Game Boy Advance games. And obviously they realize that's going on too. because that's part of what they're trying to tap into. And I think the only plus, at least for me, with GameStop getting into this, is that one of the things that I read that they were talking about doing is that they were going to refurbish the consoles and make sure the games work and everything else like that. I have been burned getting stuff on eBay by getting either something that was counterfeit, getting something that, or I don't know if it's just like some kind of script in eBay that goes, tested and works, even though that never actually happened. But so I think that'll be good because, if they're going to get into really refurbishing this stuff and, kind of standing behind it, at least if you get something that's not right, so to speak, you can return it. You don't really have that option a lot with eBay, and then the whole process is just kind of messy. So I think that's the plus of them coming into it. But I've also read where if somebody trades in something and it has stuff like the instruction manual or the box, they're not going to pay any more for that. They're just going to do one price. And the other thing is that when you're ordering online, you're not going to know whether or not you're going to get the box or the instructions. It just might be the game. Kind of the same way with their loose games now. So what makes me question that is that if they're trying to go after this market, which we know is made up of a lot of people that are completionists,
yes,
by not providing that kind of like base information, it really makes me wonder how successful they'll be. Because again, like that, I don't think most people are going to roll up off the street and go, yo, I need a Super Nintendo. Like, that's just not going to happen. Like, that's going to happen online, and they obviously see something that's going on, whether it's eBay or anything else like that. But again, those people that are going after it, they really want, the complete product. Or, there's some people that don't. They don't care if they get loose carts and things like that. But I think there's a lot more of the former than there is in the latter. So I'm not sure how they're going to deal with that. Because I know for me personally, when I've bought things used in the past from GameStop, I mean, the quality can go from exceptional to absolutely horrendous. And the only thing to mitigate that is the return policy.
Yeah.
So
you would cry if you saw my copy of Suikoden 5. Like who would do that to a game? Just
right.
And I'm still looking to get a better copy, but yeah. So I know exactly what you're saying.
GameStop too, you have the return policy, and you hope that the staff is knowledgeable enough to reject counterfeits, like DS cards that are counterfeit.
Oh god.
And that's another great reason. You can look at the pictures on an eBay auction only so many times, and it looks like the thing is embossed on the back. It looks like everything's legit, but you just don't know.
Yeah.
Nope.
Well, and not just that. With eBay, I mean, people can just put up fake pictures.
It's true.
Here's something I Googled, and this looks legit. Maybe I'll fool the ass clown that's going to buy this game.
Yeah. See, I'm lucky enough. I've got a good GameStop where the crew's really good for spotting stuff like that. Plus, I'm enough of a regular there that, sometimes GameStop will sell new games that have actually been opened and stuff. They know I'm not going to do that. That's another thing. They know that when I walk in and ask for a game that to go ahead and pull a sealed copy for me if it's there.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, generally speaking, I have a really good GameStop in my area. The Cache Valley Mall, Logan, Utah location, and but I know a lot of GameStops aren't that good, and I've been to some that in the same general area that are not that good, and it is kind of cringeworthy to even consider what some of those locations are going to be.
Right, but the other thing too is that if they do keep this for them, like if they do the trade-ins, obviously physically, and then they sell them on their website simply because it's a logistical issue with we don't have the space.
Yeah.
Again, my concern comes back to like if I go, I don't like buying used games for the most part. I do prefer to buy new. I don't like that crap that they pull where it's like, well, yeah, I mean it's open, but it's new. Like fuck you, you don't know what new means.
Exactly.
So, like, on one hand, yeah, this isn't going to be an instance where you run into a sealed copy, because obviously, if anybody had any of these kinds of games sealed, they wouldn't take them to GameStop.
Yeah, that was just an example of why.
No, but I know what you mean. Like,
the thing about
you're going to have good ones or bad ones, but the issue is going to become, at least if you go buy a used game from GameStop now, you can look at it. You're not going to be able to do that now. And like we don't know what any of their other standards are. Like for me, if I'm buying a used game, like a Super Nintendo card or something like that, the label is really important to me, especially if I don't have the box. Like I don't want I don't want to have Chris Collins written on the label or anything else like that. Like that stuff is important, and there's just going to be no way that we can know if any of that stuff is there. Yeah. So. I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic because I'd rather buy it from maybe some of the tools on the internet because people can lie and they can do fakes, but at the same time, I don't know.
You brought up the when I worked for GameStop for a little while, and they straight up told us if somebody brings in to trade in a game that's still in a sealed box, unless they have a receipt from GameStop, just straight up do not accept it because more than likely it's a stolen copy.
Wow.
Yeah. I can understand that, but when you're dealing with games that are 20, 30 years old and somebody still has a sealed copy, it's probably not likely it's stolen. So,
yeah.
It's not.
And hopefully for their sake, they're smart enough to put it on eBay instead of take it to GameStop.
Yeah. It'll be
just think about the pilot program in general. Like, what if, since we know GameStop doesn't have anything to classify whether these things came with boxes or instructions, what's stopping the GameStop employees from just taking those anyway?
Yeah, true.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Just the threat of being fired, I imagine.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. But GameStop doesn't care about whether or not that stuff's included anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, hell, maybe I should go put in for a part-time job at one of these locations that is getting this stuff, and
maybe I can make a little podcast.
Right, and I can make a little side money.
Yeah.
Another thing I would point out is this also seems like kind of a subtle fuck you to the hardware manufacturers. Obviously, there is a trend going toward digital, and I've said in the past, I really do believe there are people within the game industry who will be overjoyed when those standalone systems of generations past that don't rely heavily on the online back end just aren't readily available anymore. And the fact that GameStop is taking this step really tells me that they're kind of they're taking a side in the whole matter, because I think they realize that if things do go full digital and completely online reliant, if not online required, that's not good for their business.
Nope.
So they're definitely looking out for number one.
Yeah, I mean, and it's such a strange thing for me in general. Like, I have a lot of trouble believing any talking head from the video game industry that wants to sit there and claim that GameStop is the devil because they resell used games. But those are the same companies that are be super quick to sell it, to give GameStop an exclusive pre-order bonus, just so they can make sure that they make sales. Like, that's just one of those things that just strikes me as so asinine, because it obviously GameStop is going to do what's best for GameStop, and these two groups they have to coexist. I mean, there's just no way around that. Yeah. But I think it's really disingenuous of these companies to also act like they're not in bed with each other, because they so clearly are.
Yeah.
And GameStop does realize, like, I do think, Pat, to your point, I do think that they do. This is them looking out for themselves, and I think that's really appropriate. Simply because, I mean, really, I don't know what it's like where you guys live. I'm in Atlanta. I'm in Metro Atlanta, and the video game section of every store that I go to every year is smaller and smaller. Even though we still have an abundance of physical copies of things. So, this also is something that I think retailers are looking at as a possible issue as well, because maybe they see the writing on the wall. Or, to the point of last generation, the last generation, every game was $60. These guys are buying these games that are significantly high margin, and then they're also having to discount them later because they're not selling them. Yeah. So it seems like their solution is let's just get rid of this shit, or we'll lower the amount of stock that we get in because we don't know what's going to sell anymore. And at least GameStop, GameStop doing this move is strictly, it's pure profit for them because they don't have to pay anybody else. So,
can you imagine the butt hurt in boardrooms if that's the way they start trending, start phasing out the newer stuff to? Oh,
well, yeah, I don't think that'll happen, but
I
think the other thing that's interesting about this move is that this shows, and you know what? Maybe this could be a good thing. Like, why don't we frame this a little bit differently right now? Okay, we talked about how a lot of these a lot of these game companies, you heard me go on that rant about Nintendo like 20 minutes ago. They don't put two and two together that there's a group of people. Of people that that would be their customers that want this stuff, and they're not catering to them. So GameStop is doing that. So maybe this could also push some of these developers and publishers to go, look, obviously there are people that want these older games. Maybe we can release them on a newer system and provide that option as well. Because GameStop is selfish, but so are the publishers. Yeah. And maybe this will be something that'll get their asses in gear and go, obviously there's a market for this stuff, so why don't we start actually catering to that market with digital releases or something of that sort? Because obviously people still want to play these games. And they could provide that to us. Maybe GameStop being the one that goes, hey, we're going to start selling all that old shit again. Maybe this is maybe this is the business signal that these companies need to truly understand, wow, like Theresa was saying a little while ago, there are ways that this stuff can be communicated to these developers with what people want and these publishers what people want. Well, when you have basically a conglomerate like GameStop going, yeah, we're going to start selling this old stuff, maybe that'll finally send a signal to some of these people and they'll get their asses in gear, and we won't have waits like we did with Suikoden 2 or anything else like that. So maybe that's a better way to look at it. Like, yeah, GameStop sucks. They tend to be shady, but maybe this is what these publishers need to get their asses in gear. So that could be a good thing.
Yeah. Maybe the fact that they're selfish companies doesn't have to be a bad thing as long as they're informed of how to be selfish and do that in ways that also benefits us.
Yeah, well, they have a chance here to really super serve a particular niche if they want to go that far. Yeah. So what they could do in the process of refurbishing these systems, they could also take that a little further. And for example, with the the Genesis Model 2 has absolutely abysmal sound. You could for a little bit extra throw in a mega amp in there and get a really great audio out of the Genesis Model 2.
Oh, that would be
if these guys became skilled refurbishers rather than just bare bones refurbishers, that would be a game changer.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, I didn't know the Genesis 2. What's the difference between that and the Genesis 1?
The Genesis 2 was a cost cut version, so they actually used lower quality components, especially in the audio section. So if you compare the sound output of a Genesis 1 to a Genesis 2, the difference is just amazing.
There's a Genesis 1 that's pretty bad, too.
Yeah, there was one late in the life of the Genesis 1 that was pretty bad, but for the most part...
if I remember correctly, there was also one that was basically sax.
Yeah, anything before 1990, I think 1991, The Genesis were really good. After that, it was kind
No
of hit and
kidding.
miss.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Because you guys have seen a Genesis 3, right? That thing
Yeah.
looks bizarre.
I think it looks bizarre, but it also has actually very good output.
Does it really?
Yeah. You can't play
Oh, there's
virtual
a
racing on
Genesis-
it, but...
Oh, well, that's a loss. No, there's a Genesis 3 actually at that store nearby me, and I actually have a Genesis 2. I just haven't hooked it up. I didn't realize that there was an audio difference. I did have a Genesis 1 when it was out, the first one, and the thing that I thought was so cool about it is the thing had a headphone jack.
yeah.
So that was great for not bothering my mother. Man, Sega was ahead of their time in so many ways.
yeah.
Well, heck, Sega used to have. They were one of the first businesses to have it where you could, actually download content over the internet onto their systems.
Yeah, Sega Channel.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't
No,
technically the internet back then. It was a
those
cable
were the days.
network. But
Technically, they did the first DLC too with Sonic and Knuckles.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
pretty much.
well,
It was more of an expansion,
Yeah,
but
that's what I was gonna say.
No, that was you know what I'm saying. It's the same concept
Yeah.
applies.
yeah, I've
So-
got that. I got Sonic and Knuckles cartridge over here.
Yeah, good times.
So
Everything new sucks.
interesting correlation from what we've been talking about here. There are reports out now that the global video gaming market as a whole is going to see 9.4% growth this year.
Yeah.
it's almost 10%, folks.
And if you think about the current size of the market, that is massive.
Right, but the caveat to that is that the majority of that, like at least the link that you gave us,
Yeah.
it said the majority of that was coming from China and it was on
No
mobile.
surprise whatsoever.
Yeah, but it was
Nope.
on mobile.
Yeah.
That was the big thing. Like, I don't want anybody to get it twisted. This is people playing shit on their Androids and their iPhones.
Yeah.
Which is a trend I know a lot of people don't particularly care for. But that could be, again, like, we're talking about framing things a certain way. Maybe that'll be another thing for these developers, to put out something that's actually quality, more so than what we have now, at least.
Yeah.
Maybe this is what they need to see this kind of stuff, because those emerging markets definitely matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and gateway games are a thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not familiar with Tencent, who have been singled out as one of the best, beneficiaries of this growth. I'm not familiar with their products, but if they're putting out stuff that could make people explore the game industry further, and China is an interesting beast right now because they really just recently unbanned conventional game consoles.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got the big three just starting to move in there. And obviously the mobile market is leading the charge because everyone's already on mobile in Japan or in China. And so
Now that I think about it,
that was
though,
obviously what?
now that I'm thinking about it, with Microsoft and Sony have already moved into China, but they're very limited as far as what games they can put out.
Yeah,
If Nintendo gets in there with the Wii U, they stand a chance to do very well.
it's true.
Because
It is, but then you also have to remember that Nintendo is a Japanese company.
so
and,
is Sony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nintendo at this point is more craven for money, I think, than most of the other companies. But I think they're also a company that is typically doesn't see where their strengths lie as far as being able to deploy to the world, essentially. Like, in other words,
Yeah.
they know. They've sort of kind of focused on their core group over and over and over and over again. And then with the Wii, they were able to branch out and get a whole different group of people. And since then, they've sort of been chasing those folks without really realizing that they already left the industry. Those are those people that are playing games on their cell phones.
Yeah,
So the ones that would buy a Wii for something like Wii Fit. So this could also work well in Nintendo's favor with the mobile market going up with their deal with DNA if they actually put out some decent content for phones. But then that also comes to the point: are they going to cannibalize their own user base anyway? I don't even necessarily think that they will, because the people that would buy a 3DS or something like that and still may have a mobile phone. Like Pat, you keep saying you're playing that Final Fantasy game.
Which
That's
is
not
also
gonna
by
stop you
DNA.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you're not going to stop buying 3DS games.
No.
But they can also get a market of people that are never going to buy a 3DS or whatever the next console is and capitalize on that. Imagine that in China.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is just the beginning of something. I fully expect these numbers to explode next year and probably for a good amount of time thereafter.
Yeah.
This actually reminds me when we were talking about GameStop. Remember
Well, I'm
that
sorry, Brandon.
part of it?
You know, Brandon has turned into a Cylon.
I think Brandon.
You know, you get on sit down. Uh-oh.
Yeah, Brandon, we're losing you, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, Lord.
Okay. You're
Everything's lagging.
Try again.
Okay.
good. No.
Okay. I was saying, you remember that part on the Citadel in Mass Effect 2 where you're walking up and there's that one alien selling games?
No.
Yeah, I do.
You remember that? And I remember first seeing that and I was like, oh my God, they've got GameStop up here too.
That would have been a really interesting product placement for GameStop had they had they caught on to it.
It'd be like Taco Bell and Demolition Man.
Yeah, they just own everything.
But I mean, literally, I really think that was sort of BioWare's statement on GameStop because, I mean, the business model of that particular business on the Citadel is literally just like GameStop's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They even brought up the fact that if you got this particular game, you could get a pre-order bonus.
Yeah, well,
Even in the future, things suck.
right.
Yeah.
So, there's a bit of a feel-good story going on in the coming weeks. Pretty much anyone who had a PC in the late 80s, early 90s played Chips Challenge to some extent. That game is coming to Steam along with the sequel that never got released due to contract issues.
You are kidding me. I haven't thought about that game in ages.
Yeah, it's one of those good stories that just kind of happened. What happened before? Let's see. The guy's name's Chuck Somerville. Released the game back in '89. Made and finished a sequel. But the game's original trademark was sold to a publisher. Well, I guess I can't call them a publisher, but it was some umbrella company of sorts that wanted him to fund the actual publishing, which in the early 90s was kind of a non-starter.
Mm-hmm.
From the sound of it, he was talking about how the game might not have been able to see the light of day until maybe he passed away and had his wife leak it on the internet or something. With Steam, problem solved.
Yeah.
And so, Chips Challenge 2, going up on Steam alongside the original next month. The original will cost $2. Chips Challenge 2 will be $5, but there will be a bundle that puts both games together for $5 as well. So, definitely a feel-good story, and
That is awesome.
Yeah.
just shows one. I rail a lot about on the concept of, what I call our digital future, but this is a good showcase of some of the benefits of that, and something that really wouldn't have been possible without digital distribution, and I'm happy to see it.
Yeah.
God, Chips Challenge, man, I remember seeing that on. God, that game and like knockoffs of it were like freaking everywhere at one time.
Yeah, well, it was part
I mean,
of
you
the
couldn't walk in.
it was part of the Microsoft Entertainment Pack, which was installed on a lot of computers back
Yeah.
in the day. So you kind of ran into it, whether you wanted to or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. My first legitimate computer was purchased in 1994. Windows 3.1 machine. Chips Challenge just happened to be on there. And I had all the games that you would have expected a PC gamer buying a computer in 94 to have. Obviously, Doom 2, that stuff.
Missed.
No, not Missed, actually. So maybe not everything. My mom would have loved that, though. But for a good long time, I'm pretty sure Chips Challenge saw more play on that computer than anything else that was installed on it. It's just so simply addictive. That I just know I'm going to have a full relapse next month when...
Yep, we're picking that up too. It's like,
There's going to be a level editor and... Oh.
Yeah, I remember playing it on the Atari Lynx of all systems.
Oh, wow. I knew there was a Lynx version, but I've never actually seen it in action.
Yeah, that didn't go well.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, well then again, nothing on the Atari Lynx went very well.
That system was so big. So fucking huge.
It was about the size of one of the laptops of the era.
I mean, my
Pretty much.
God, like each the left and the right quadrant of that system were as big as the screen. So oh man, yeah.
Is that a
Rygar
Lynx?
was fun, but man, that thing was huge.
Is that a Lynx in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me?
I'm shit.
That's a medical condition.
It really is. It's half the size of a regular skateboard.
Yeah.
It was
But,
about as big. I'm pretty sure it was just about as big as a Sega Game Gear was.
It was longer.
Longer than that, yeah.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know how the thickness was, but yeah, it was longer. So, I mean, you could probably beat someone to death with.
Yeah,
one
that's what I was about
if you
to
were so
say.
inclined.
If you needed to put someone down, the Atari Lynx is there.
The key is you had to take the batteries out afterwards because the thing would eat what was it, 4 AA's in like a half an hour.
Pretty
A lot
much.
of those handhelds back then were just brutal with batteries, though.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just cheated. For my Game Gear, I just bought an AC adapter.
Yeah.
I
what
wasn't.
you had to
I was
do.
never playing it outside because obviously the Game Gear, you don't want to play it outside because you won't see anything. It's kind of the opposite of the Game Boy that way.
Yeah.
And whenever I was playing it, I was always nearby a power outlet, so why the hell not?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You guys remember the TV tuner for the Game Gear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Easy.
I remember that being like the coolest thing ever.
It was.
And now we've got our Android phones that
Yeah.
just,
You guys remember bunny ears?
oh my god.
I've
Antennas?
actually, I guess I probably
You
should
guys
mention this, but I've got over here I have a Turbo Express with the TV tuner.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember Fire?
But that wheel thing, I heard that was awesome.
Yeah.
That now, man.
Yeah. Okay.
World.
On to more depressing news.
Yeah. Konami's Japanese website. Well, that's how this story started. Konami's Japanese website stated that PT will be delisted on Wednesday. The implications of this are pretty obvious, especially in light of the current sort of uncertain status of Hideo Kojima with the company. And the story's kind of developed over the course of the day, or the course of the last couple days. People associated with the project, Guillermo del Toro and Norman Reedus, have both confirmed the cancellation. And so, Silent Hills. And so this is a very promising franchise revival that's kind of not going to see the light of day.
Yeah, this is
Because
Konami.
Konami are assholes.
No, this is essentially Konami taking the gun, aiming it at their own foot, and shooting themselves.
But see, here's the thing though. Konami's not just a video game company. They're not like Nintendo. I mean, they have like sports clubs and things like that in Japan. Like they have other revenue streams. Yeah. And I would not be surprised, especially with Kojima and everything that's happening, if they're not just going fuck the video game industry. You know, they'll still do what they have to do, and they do have great intellectual property, but they don't seem to really want to deal with how the industry works now. And if you have, particularly like, you know, talking about trying to make sure that you've penetrated the Western market. I mean, Guillermo del Toro is obviously popular. Norman Reedus is extremely popular. Like, you could attract people that might not be interested in your project just because they're involved. Yeah. And Konami's pulling the rug out from under it because maybe they're just going, you know, this isn't going to be a guarantee for us, so fuck it. And it's a shame because... Go ahead.
Seems to have been this... I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I was going to say, there does seem to be this trend of all these big, major... famous designers in Japan seem to be up and jumping ship from the major gaming publishers and are going on their own. I mean, Shinji Mikami did it.
Yeah, Mikami did it.
Inafune did it.
Yeah, Inafune did it.
The guys from Platinum Games did it.
Yeah, Hinorobu Sakaguchi did it. Yeah, I mean, maybe a lot of these guys too are just figuring, you know, maybe this is with the way the industry works over there. Maybe they don't want to work in the confines of it. But I also, having worked, obviously I've never worked for a Japanese company, but it would not surprise me if Kojima also has, you know, a kind of a pedigree, and maybe some other people in the company were resentful of what he was able to do, and they were not. Because if you notice, I mean, it seemed like over the last few years, they had him work on anything and everything. I mean, they had him involved in the reboot of Castlevania. Yeah. And then now this thing with Silent Hill, you know, maybe they don't have a stable over there anymore of people that are sort of on deck to kind of make this stuff happen and make new games. And maybe it's not a priority for them compared to someone like Nintendo because they have so many other things that they do.
Could be.
And whatever's going on, it looks less and less like an amicable parting with every bit of news that drops. Something's going on there that's adversarial in nature.
Oh, yeah. And it wouldn't, you know, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if this has been something that has existed for a long time. I mean, we all know how many times Kojima was like, yeah, this is my last Metal Gear. Yeah. You know, and part of me feels like, you know, that part of that might have come from a creative place where he was like, this is just not the kind of thing that I want to make anymore. Yeah. But the other part of me, especially now looking at what's happened with all the stuff that we're seeing with his departure and how they just kind of took his name off of everything, it would not surprise me if this is something that had been bubbling for quite some time. You know, anything where you start really dealing with money and people's egos obviously can get nasty. But I mean, you have to wonder, like at least from a shareholder standpoint, what did it look like for Konami to have their biggest, you know, game director constantly going, I can't wait to not do this anymore. You know, I feel like that had to come from an external source, and then maybe there was always friction with Kojima and Konami. And, you know, Japanese developers, just with the way they do business and everything, would not have talked about this stuff. Mm-hmm. So maybe this was something that was a long time coming, and it just finally came to a head.
Yeah, probably right.
It's sure ugly now that it's playing out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if, I've said it before on the show, I would not be surprised if one of the things Kojima does next is he goes into the film industry, because everybody knows that Kojima is a major film buff.
And he's wanted to do that for quite some time.
Yeah. I would not be surprised if he ends up going independent and maybe either starts his own production company or...
Well, that's already...
You know,
I would not be surprised. I would love to see him do something like that, but I honestly think if he went into the Hollywood system, he would get eaten alive.
Yeah.
And I think that's unfortunate. I really think I would not be surprised if this signals his exit from the video game industry, at least for a while, which to me is upsetting. And what bothers me is that I don't really feel like we have a lot of creators these days, at least from the Japanese side of things, and I'm sure Pat, you'll disagree with me, that really have a strong vision, and that can do things that are unique and kind of unseen. Because whether you like the guy or not, whether you like Metal Gear or not, Metal Gear, particularly Metal Gear Solid, was a watershed for this industry, and even up through kind of the clusterfuck of Metal Gear Solid 4, everyone wanted to see what this guy would do next, and it's a shame to see this obviously happening, and maybe a guy like this getting shuffled out of the industry, because we need unique voices in this industry, especially when the industry has moved towards everything needing to be cookie cutter. And Kojima, you can say a lot of things about him. He's not cookie cutter.
No.
Maybe that was the whole point, though. Maybe that was the whole...
was just getting...
Yeah. The whole rub.
Maybe he just felt trapped creatively at Konami. They kept making him go to do another Metal Gear, but he wanted to go out and do something else. Or it could be maybe he's just tired,
burnt out.
I mean,
but if he was tired, you would think that the company would go out of their way to go, look, it's all good, we respect everything that he did for the industry and for us, and he wants to retire now. If that was the case, I think we would be having a very different conversation. It was obvious that this was not something that I think that Kojima wanted, at least, or at least maybe, again, we can speculate all day long about the politics behind it, but if it was even remotely amicable, none of this stuff would have happened.
No.
They wouldn't have, and just the damage to Konami's brand, at least for Western gamers. I mean, I remember a lot of people threw a fit. They were like, why did they take his name off it? What does this? There are people that probably would not buy a Metal Gear game if Kojima's name wasn't on it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if this could just be that he wanted to go do something different, I think it would have been handled completely differently. So I really think this was something that Konami did. They were like, for whatever reason, they were like, get the fuck out. And that's led to where we are.
Yeah. Pretty ugly finish.
Yeah.
Really. And didn't have to go that way. So.
Now on to something happier.
Yeah, well,
Mostly.
Yeah, hopefully.
It'll be interesting, at least. The BBC is planning a documentary centered on the Grand Theft Auto franchise and the controversy that sort of followed it throughout its existence.
Yep.
Yes.
I cannot wait.
Yeah. Anybody who's listening, just if before this comes out, I highly recommend that you go to your nearest bookstore or library, if they have it, and pick up a copy of a book called Jacked by David Kushner. This is a book that was written by the same man who wrote the book Masters of Doom, which is about the rise of id Software and the creation of Wolfenstein, Doom, Quake. Jacked is about the Sam and Dan Houser, the founders of what we now know as Rockstar Games, some of their early projects, as well as the creation of the GTA brand. It also has the famous attorney/ambulance chaser Jack Thompson into the story, and actually tries to do its best to be fair to him, which is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Well, being fair to him doesn't necessarily mean being nice to him.
Yeah.
He tries to make it out like part of me thinks that because Kushner wanted to be as fair as possible, he tried to make it out like Jack Thompson had the best of intentions, but there's just no way around it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really hard if you weren't there to describe just the massive impact that GTA 3 had on the industry and just the culture in general. This was one of the few, this game came out literally like, I think it was it before or after 9/11? I can't remember.
It was before.
It was before.
It was before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 99, I believe.
No, it came out in 2001.
The PS2 was out because... So that would be late 2000. Well, late 2000 was the launch, so it would have to be 2001 sometime.
Yeah, but this was the first game in a long time, and I do mean in a long time.
It was released on October 22nd of 2001.
Oh, so after.
So it was like a month or so after 9/11. Yeah, this game, it was one of the first games in a long time that got attention from the mainstream media, and not necessarily all negative either. I can distinctly remember watching, The Daily Show and, having guests come on and they talk about, man, I love Grand Theft Auto 3. It's so much fun. And Lewis Black even had one of his Back in Black segments where he was talking about games that were coming on, and he basically said, the story of Grand Theft Auto 3 is, I don't care what the story of Grand Theft Auto 3 is, because I'm running over prostitutes with my car and beating old ladies to death with lead pipes.
The franchise in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, it was one of the first games that came out at the time that had this sense of scope of such a large area where you could almost go anywhere and do anything. Obviously, you had stuff like Shenmue that came before it, but
that's the one I actually keep comparing it to when I played it.
Yeah, but the difference is you don't go looking for sailors; you kill them.
It's true.
Yeah. And, it had this big sort of epic cinematic crime story behind it and all this different stuff that you could do in it. It was the sense of freedom that really did not exist that much in games before then. Obviously, you had the early GTA games that came before it, and you also had a Nintendo 64 game that came out before it called Body Harvest. That was a sci-fi action game that was made by Rockstar North back when they were still called DMA Design. It had a lot of the mechanics that would find its way into GTA 3, but just the enormous impact this game had on the culture and on the industry in general cannot be overstated.
I think the other thing that was really important that Grand Theft Auto did, and I think it was because I almost want to say that they maybe didn't think this would happen, but I remember for me when I got it, like I'm a really big fan of the series. I know probably now that its popularity, it's one of those things that's really easy to hate. But it's one of those games that appeals to me on a very different level than something like an RPG or anything like that. But I will never forget the thing that made it stand out for me, because it was like, oh, cool, here's this open world. That was cool, but the thing that killed me, the thing that really hooked me and made me go, holy shit, I'm doing something different, because I had a PC as well, so doing something where I got to run around and kill people or do something that was sort of like against the rules, those kind of choices were available on PC games, and they really weren't in console games. So that wasn't what excited me about it. I remember distinctly there's a mission very early in the game where you were asked to assassinate a guy, and you basically get to this point where you can follow him. He gets in a limo, and you can follow him around, or you can do whatever. And I put in a cheat code and got a bazooka, and I stood on top. I stood on top of the roof of where this guy was coming out of, and instead of like sniping him or doing anything else like that, I blew his whole fucking car up with a bazooka. And the thing is that, and again, I don't know if they intended for me to be able to do that, but it was the fact that I had the option to do so that was utterly fascinating. And there was all kinds of stuff in that game where if you could basically be smart enough to figure out a way around the mechanics, you could get away with a lot of things. And that that was always, to me, the most interesting thing about Grand Theft Auto. And I feel like they have sort of toned that down a little bit in the newer games. There's not nearly as much of an option for that like emergent gameplay where you can just go, let me think my way around this. Like Grand Theft Auto 5 actually has has assassination mission that work just like what I was talking about, where it's like pretty much anything goes. Just figure out the way to take out this target and have fun doing it. But that was the thing.
And be able to get away.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, take out target and be able to get away fast enough.
Exactly, yeah. But that was the thing that blew my mind about Grand Theft Auto, because I'd never seen a game do that. Every other game that I had really played up until that point, if there was a mission structure or something else like that, you pretty much had to adhere to it. Whereas this game seemed to almost go, well, I mean, if you can work a way around it, we're not going to be mad at you. We're not going to punish you. And then just the different stuff that you can get in the world. If you, if you ended up running over a bunch of people and you had the cops chase after you, just seeing the combination of everything that's in there, the physics and the way the police would chase you, going through pedestrians, just kind of seeing the crazy stuff that would happen. And then they were so smart to program in so much of the things that made the world seem real. Like I remember in Grand Theft Auto 3, it was either 3 or it was Vice City. I remember just walking down the street, and then somebody got into a fist fight, and then that fist fight eventually escalated to a gunfight, and like just for no reason. It's not there to serve any gameplay purpose. It's just there. And there's so many things that are in Grand Theft Auto that are sort of just there that it just makes the experience so much better than the sum of its parts. God, those games are so good, dude. They really are.
You bring up Vice City. I'm not sure, but did Vice City actually end up outselling GTA 3 at some point?
Oh,
I'm not sure of the sales figures. I'm pretty sure it did, but I remember too. Like 3 was sort of like, if we're talking about gateway games, 3 was the one that got some people in. But I will never forget, I had people that had no interest in video games whatsoever that wanted to come over to my house, use my PlayStation 2, and play Vice City because Vice City had such a good cast. And, it had Ray Liotta as the main character in there. And the story was great. The world was fully realized as like 80s Miami and everything that was going on in it. There's if you guys actually go to IMDb and look at the cast lists in that game, it's crazy. Ridiculous. It's like a Martin Scorsese film.
I personally, this is just me, I personally credit Vice City solely with making the 80s retro nostalgia fad of the early to mid 2000s.
Ooh, that's a good point.
I know Flock of Seagulls were happy it happened.
Yeah.
The trailer. Yeah. The trailer for
the commercials had yeah.
I think Rockstar realized, because 4 didn't really have a lot of hooks for you to get into that kind of stuff, whereas 5 is just all over the place with the amount of stuff that you can do.
They've got an entire like console grade golf simulator within the game.
Dude, you want to talk about crazy stuff? You can sit down to watch TV. There's 8 hours of original programming in that game.
Yep. You can go on the smartphones. They got whole websites you can go on to.
Oh yeah, they have websites that are making fun of Tinder and Facebook. I mean, there's so much stuff in those games. Like Pat, dude. Honestly, if you buy that game and you hate it, I'll buy it from you. I'm serious.
No, I don't expect that I'll hate it. I don't expect that I'll have the money for it just yet. But
Get it on PS4 because the online component is a lot of fun too, and me and Los will play with you.
Cool. Yeah, money's going to be really tight for me these next few months, but that is something I'd like to find a way to work in there because a lot of people talk about how GTA 3, one of the big things that that really changed it was getting that third-person view instead of just the top-down view of the previous games. And I think that going first-person just takes that to another level, and I'm looking forward to all that first-person stuff in a world that huge. And I talked at the beginning of the show about all the satire and how I'll absolutely have an appreciation for that. But I just look forward to navigating this huge world, you know, in the first person. I'm not a big immersion guy, but for some reason with GTA 5, that just really appeals to me.
Well, and it does it really well. I mean, like, I know you and I had talked in the past about Forza Horizon 2, and like, you know, you had talked about like it's cool just being able to kind of like drive through the countryside and stuff like that. Like GTA has sections of that where like there's even a mission where you end up getting into a race with your friends, and it takes you from one end of their little continent to the other. It's just a blast. Yeah, just from immersion standpoint. I mean, I have friends who have been playing the game since it came out on the 360 and still haven't beaten it, but they just do everything else in it because it's fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is literally one of those games that, you know, there is a campaign in it, and the campaign is really good. I mean, it's very well written. But there is so much stuff that you can go off doing this. You could go off to the side. You could literally go and play it for hours and never go any further in the story campaign.
Yeah. Right. And I think the other thing that it does really well too, and this is, I think it's been part of the reason why it's had the longevity that it's had for me, is that the online is a blast, because like at its core, like the mission structure in GTA isn't really that interesting. But all of a sudden when you have those kinds of missions, and you're able to do them with friends, it becomes a completely different beast, and it's
especially
a blast.
The heist mentions.
Yeah. Well, now even before the heist, like, you know, there was just so much stuff like where just based on the way the game is programmed and the way that stuff reacts, when you start inserting other people into that mold, it becomes very unpredictable, and you get some more of that just emergent gameplay that only happens because you're doing it with other people. Like, to give you an example, Pat, I was playing with Los and my friend Colin. And I was driving. I got a 4-door car because you can get your own cars and you can soup them up. I was driving. I had a 4-door car, and Los got in the passenger seat and Colin got in the back. And on certain missions, you can just destroy things on the way to the mission starting point, and the cops will not get alerted. So Los and Colin just decided, hey, we should just start throwing sticky bombs at everyone that we pass by and blow them up. And like, so what ended up happening is that they ended up sticking a car that was too close to us, and they blew it up. So it flipped our car, right? And so we end up getting out of it. And what happens is when those explosions happen, it causes panic in the populace. So we're just wandering around. Like, there's like these shells of like 8 or 9 cars that we just roasted. And out of nowhere, because these people were further down the street, like we apparently scared them, one of them ran away, got into a car, and then, like, I guess because they're trying to get away, they literally sped through the same intersection that we were in and killed all of us. And none of that stuff would have ever happened if they hadn't decided to just go blow shit up in the first place. Yeah. And that's not something that, like, again, it was like they programmed the AI to react that way, but the fact that they ended up taking us out, like, all the AI was doing was tracking through the intersection, because the AI pretty much is told to kind of stay on the roads unless they're panicked, in which case they could start swerving and go around. But yeah, I mean, they just murdered all of us. Like, we didn't even get to finish the mission.
Oh, best wipe ever.
There's just so many opportunities in that game that work that way. So, and I realize we're obviously getting away from the topic of the book, but it, you know, just from somebody that's really interested in the way that the games work, or even just the thought process behind it, that book is worth reading for anybody listening that has any passing interest in GTA or game design, because the Housers are kind of a different breed of creator in the same way that Kojima is, because they definitely changed the industry just based on making the kind of games that they wanted to make.
Well, much like Kojima, they're heavily invested in, you know, in film as well. In fact, Rockstar, you know, they're film producers on the side as well.
And there's a certain degree of cultural awareness going on in both Kojima's case and Rockstar's that that you really have to sort of acknowledge.
Yeah, that reminds me. Do we know if Rockstar is going to be doing anything for E3 this year?
No idea.
Nope.
Because we haven't heard from them since GTA 5 came out.
That's been a while.
Yeah, well, they usually have a 3 or 4 year cycle for GTA. So if we do hear something, it's not going to be GTA related.
Well, I know that. I don't know about you, but I want to play another Red Dead pretty soon.
I have heard rumors that
I'd love to do another Red Dead or another LA Noire, even though we know that team.
Or maybe they'll finally get off their asses and finish Agent. That espionage game they've been teasing us for the last decade or so.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's interesting too.
You know what? I'll let you do that. I was fixing to say, I actually would not mind if they did like another historical game like Red Dead, but instead of in the Old West, place it in the medieval era. I don't know if any of you guys have ever seen this movie called Flesh and Blood. It's a Paul Verhoeven movie from the mid '80s. It is a bloody goddamn movie. I remember when I saw it, I was like, if Rockstar ever made a medieval action game, it would look like this. Because this movie was so violent that when it first came here to the US, it actually got an X rating.
Wow.
So I'm like, that would be something they could do. That would actually be really, because they freaking made Red Dead Redemption made Westerns interesting again.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Red Dead was a fantastic game. It was I think it was really it did so many things right, and in the same way that I think GTA 5 does. What's interesting too that I just wanted to point out too, I don't think Rockstar would be able to make the games that they do if they didn't have Take-Two behind them, which is pretty much kind of said take the time to make these good games. And it's really easy, for us to bag on these publishers and the things that they do. But Take-Two, they gave, regardless what your opinion of the game is, they gave Ken Levine 5 years with BioShock Infinite. Take-Two lets Rockstar do. Yeah, Take-Two lets Rockstar do what they need to do to produce good games. And they seem to be one of those rare publishers that's like, we're not so much really concerned with the iterative nature of these games. Just produce something that's gonna be good, and then therefore will make money. Because there's no, when you take a look at particularly GTA 5, there's not an open world game that is at least as far as the world goes that's more interesting than GTA 5 currently, at least.
Yeah.
And I imagine the only people that'll top that will be Rockstar.
Yeah,
that's fair.
That makes you wonder, as far as the line goes, how far over the line are they going to step next time? Because in GTA 5, you straight up had nudity and Trevor's dick and balls hanging out, and how much further can they go?
Well, I think they survived hot coffee, so I think they can pretty much do whatever they want.
Yeah,
they've kind of got carte blanche now.
Yeah, and then plus, I think there's a different generation of people now that are buying their games that have had internet porn since they were 10 years old. So something like Trevor's dick swinging around in one scene doesn't really. It's not a point of offense
anymore.
So yeah. I guess we'll move on to the Valve story, which made the internet explode.
Oh, yeah. Goody!
They launch a mod marketplace on Steam and thereby start World War III.
Yeah, Gabe went out for a trip and came back, and the internet was on fire. So that was nice. I'm guessing some of you guys have something to say about this one.
As far as I know, this is just like something people who wanted to, if you had mods and you wanted to sell it, you could sell them, couldn't you? It's not like a requirement, is it?
No, it's not a requirement at all.
And that's why it's funny that everyone's butthurt about it.
Yeah. Is it less about that and more about how much of the cut that Valve will get?
That was a lot of it, but
that was
I think
part
some
of it. The other thing too. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Theresa. I apologize.
That's okay. Another thing too is the outright thievery of intellectual
Exactly.
content. It's
There were
just
people that had
ridiculous.
mods where they just changed the color and they were able
Or
to make money on
changed
it. They stole
nothing.
somebody's shit.
Yeah. Or they didn't even change the color palette. They just they did. They flat out stole. And it's appalling. And Valve does not have, well, probably doesn't have the resources to make sure that this isn't what's happening. I mean, how could they?
They need to hire moderators.
Yeah, a lot.
I think the big problem with that is that it comes from the culture of Valve. I mean, those, if you look at anything that you guys have read about the way that company works, they really just kind of believe that whatever is going to be happening and the things that they design and the work that they do, they expect people to essentially kind of do the right thing. And that sort of doesn't work with the way the rest of the world works. Like, the fact that they didn't see this coming, that people wouldn't steal shit and everything, is really kind of dumb.
Well, if they expected the community to self-govern, they should have given the 99%, well, maybe only 90% of the community who will do the right thing, the tools to basically snitch on the 10% who aren't.
Yes.
Very much, like reporting Craigslist ads.
Yeah.
I mean, there's got to be something.
They need some form of quality control. Is what they need.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing
They
is,
just
I think the marketplace itself is kind of going to self-regulate itself. As if somebody sees a listing for what essentially is the same mod 3 different times, just by nature, they're gonna not want to purchase any of them.
But see, then you also get into the territory of, like, with most of these mod makers, they're doing this stuff for free anyway. So how do they even prove it's theirs?
Yeah, there's that problem too.
Like when you look at that, like, who's to say that Joe Blow created the nudity mod for whatever the fuck when Craig Smith said he did? Like, how do you even? Yeah, the idea that you would expect frankly, the idea that you would expect the populace of Steam to self-govern when money is on the line is ridiculous. And the thing is that Valve, to a certain extent, it's the same way with the Android marketplace. There's so much pirated, hacked bullshit on the Android marketplace, but Google doesn't give a fuck because they get a cut. And Valve has sort of seemed like, for different reasons, had the same idea. And yeah, you don't give the community the tools to self-regulate. This is what happens. But at the same time, Valve's making money. Now, at least to Gabe's credit, I think they did say that they would refund stuff if they'd been charged, if it had been stolen or something like that. But again, how do you police that? How do you determine who owns what?
Isn't it a 24-hour return thing? Which is much more than Google gives you. Google Play Store only gives you 3 hours to return an app.
Yeah.
But I have to wonder, though, why did Valve all of a sudden decide to introduce this? I mean, Valve isn't hurting for money or anything, are they?
Well, no, I don't think it was about them. I think it was more about, like, to be fair, there are some people that put out this really, really, really impressive mod work. And giving them a platform where they can get paid, I think is something that is very, very cool. Because in a way, I think you have some developers that almost they create the content that they have, and they really expect the modding community at the end to pick up the slack. And you can especially see that in with games like Skyrim or anything from the Fallout series, anything that Bethesda does, the modding community comes out in full force.
Yeah.
And giving those people a way to get paid, I think that's a great thing. But, again, you run into the problem of, who's regulating this content, because you just can't count on the community to do so, not when money's on the line, especially when someone could take something and conceivably make a large amount of money with no effort whatsoever.
Yeah. I guess I should probably also point out that Skyrim is not the first game on Steam to do this.
No.
Yeah, this system was actually beta tested in Defense Grid 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they've had it since September. The only difference here is that in the case of Defense Grid 2, maps that go on sale are actually moderated. So it's a case of different implementation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny that with the game that has the much larger community behind it, they would drop the moderation.
Yeah, that seems like a bad
floodgates.
idea, but well, I guess.
Clearly, they didn't think this through.
Yeah, well, that's kind of something that Valve is kind of known for. Sometimes they flub up, and in the end, they end up making it right, one way or another.
And until then, you know what they say about good intentions.
Yeah. The road to hell is paved with them. It's like I like the idea. I like the idea behind this, but I think once they get their implementation down, then this will be something that people will actually be able to use. Because also there's another problem with putting mods into a store. If you're a developer who's put a lot of effort into a mod, and nobody has ever heard of you, and then you put it up in the store, nobody's going to know if your work is any good.
It's true.
Yeah,
but I'm sure reputations will be forged over time through this.
Yeah. One system that I was thinking would probably work pretty well is if you started your mod work free, and then as more people download it, the price starts to increase.
I like it.
That is crazy enough to work and work very well.
Yeah, it is.
Give it kind of a stock system.
Yeah.
As long as there's a cap to keep it affordable, then
Oh, yeah.
I don't see what the problem.
Yeah.
Once they hit 1 million copies of whatever that thing is, they can't charge $3 trillion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one way to solve it.
But if they put it on a sensible curve, I think that could work really well.
Yep. Yeah, you can have that one, Valve.
We're good at that.
Yeah, just give me a Steam Press account. I'll be happy.
So, Amiibo.
Oh, this is gonna be fun.
Oh, for mother.
Already getting started, aren't we?
Wow.
A Nintendo exec has come out and pretty much announced what we all know, that it is going very well for them. Unprecedented, in fact. And yeah, I think everyone knows by now that it's one of the big reasons why Nintendo is refamiliarizing itself with black ink. But this is kind of a throwback to one of those initial post Wii launch E3s where they basically just came out and said, "Yeah, we're rich as fuck." Thanks.
Yeah.
Those motherfuckers. Okay, so I'm gonna try and keep this as short as and to the point as possible, as I know we're running pretty long, but what has happened?
We're way over 2 hours at this point, so you might as well go for broke.
Well, what has
It'll
happened
be a
with
great show anyway.
what has happened with the Amiibos is really kind of showing Nintendo being inept. Like, there are swaths of people on the internet who if I gave them my Twitter handle or my email address, they would probably attack me. I've never seen a group of people that are, it's almost like Stockholm Syndrome. I've never seen a group of people so willing to get shafted by a company simply because they believe it's in the better interest of something. The Amiibos are... Okay, so just a little background. Again, my son wants to get Smash. What Amiibos are little action figures that have DLC built into them. And the idea that a lot of those are rare or limited simply because there's a group of people out there scooping them up like they're fucking Beanie Babies
is ridiculous. And further, the fact that Nintendo, a company who has been so stingy with their own merchandising rights, didn't realize that there would be a tremendous market out there for this stuff, only points to the fact that they are at best ignorant and at worst inept. And part of the reason that I'm feeling this way is because I've watched the Amiibos since they came out, and the minute that it became apparent that they wouldn't be restocking certain characters, simply because they didn't know there would be a market for them, was pretty much the point where I lost interest, and I wasn't interested in supporting this or doing anything else that of that sort. Even though I liked the idea of the product, like I didn't get into Skylanders or any of that other stuff or Disney Infinity with my kid, but with Nintendo, it's something that I feel like I could have done. But the fact that this stuff was shorted at the beginning infuriated me. Well, now my son figured out what Amiibos do, and he wants some, and his birthday is coming up. So I went out to just try and look for some, and there are these like sweaty, old, 35-year-old men literally sitting outside of stores for hours on end trying to get Amiibos. And the only reason they're doing it is so they can flip them. So like if you guys go online right now, like if you try to look up like Marth, for instance, is like I think the Amiibo community calls him a unicorn or some shit like that. If you look up Marth, I don't think you can get one for less than $80. And it's a plastic fucking toy. Which again, I know there's a precedent for this stuff with any collector's market or anything else like that. But the only reason we're having this shortage is because Nintendo is fucking stupid. And so now I'm sitting here wondering, like, how am I even going to be able to get some of this stuff for my kid? And then I also sit there and I think about, again, like this is just paid DLC that has a figure attached. And when you think about all the missteps that Nintendo has done this generation and how they've pretty much worked out a way to have people not give them money, to me, this is another way. Because if I'm going to get into something like this, I do want to know that I'm going to be able to at least get a large amount of the collection, or at least get the characters that I'm interested in. And the fact that Nintendo seemed to have only made like 4 Marths, Shulk, I think Ness, there's maybe 1.5 of those. The fact that they don't even have, the fact that they didn't have the stock, they didn't have the foresight, they didn't have anything to boost that up. I know at first was done out of the idea that they were conservative, they didn't want to lose any more money. But the minute that this took off, they should have picked it back up. But I don't think that they did. I think the reason that they didn't do it is because they took people that might have been on the fence about Amiibos and people that are OCD and collectors, and they literally would have got them from maybe buying 1 copy of the toy to buying 2 or 3. And on top of that, I don't know if you guys have any Amiibos. If you look at the bottom of the package, there's a silver foil sticker that prevents the RFID card from being scanned. So you can't even, for like the collector's market, you like with Skylanders, you could put the Skylander in the package on the actual like Skylanders platform and it would register. They put that little foil sticker there specifically to stop people from stealing the RFIDs, but also because you need to take them out of the package to then play them. So for the collector's market, you automatically have people. Yeah, you automatically have people that want to keep something in the box, so they're going to buy 2. So I almost feel like this is really exploitative in a lot of ways, and Nintendo's capitalizing on it. But the fact that they came out and they go, well, we didn't think this would happen, they're fucking, oh my God,
they're
that
lying
is so
through their
dumb.
teeth.
Yep.
Yeah, they're literally lying. This is Nintendo. I've always felt was a company that didn't really do much out of greed. We do know that they've always done. Let me rephrase that. They did stuff out of greed in the NES era, and they started to kind of like slowly taper that stuff off, especially when they stopped being number one. I've never felt like when I bought a Nintendo game, I ever got ripped off. I always felt like whatever I got, they put their best effort forward.
Yeah.
But this is the first time that I've ever seen, at least since the NES days, see Nintendo do something that is obviously a blatant cash grab, and the only reason that they're not releasing more is because those people that were on the fence about getting Amiibos but still wanted to collect them, those are the people that are now waiting in line along with those 35-year-old bald sweating scalpers. Those are the people that are waiting in line to get this stuff. And what's worse is that since Nintendo has essentially helped create this secondary market, they're preventing their own fans from getting their hands on this stuff. And there's a game component to them. It's complete fucking horseshit. And the only person that I've seen in the games media that has truly taken them to task on this was Chris Kohler. And then what happened is the Nintendo fanatics attacked him. Like, there's even a phrase out there, like, you guys can Google it, an Amiibo truther. There are people out there that honestly believe, like when there was that, when it came out from Nintendo's PR that a bunch of the Amiibos got discontinued, there were Nintendo fans that didn't want to believe it. They just could not fucking believe that their sacred cow would fuck them in the ass. And that's essentially what they're doing. And I think it's deplorable. I think they should be fucking ashamed of themselves because, again, all they're doing is they're catering to a market that's not their own fucking fans. And they're hurting people for it. And it's bullshit. And they suck. And so, like, my son's like, well, like, my son wanted a Charizard. How the fuck am I going to get one of those? How am I going to get one? They're already fucking sold out everywhere. And there's nothing that I can do. And there is a game component to these that we would love to use in my household. And we can't. And I know that there are literally, based on the Amiibo sales, there's obviously hundreds of thousands of people out there that are like me. And Nintendo, I don't want to buy anything now. Like, I have some Amiibos in my car for my kid. I'm seriously thinking about returning them simply because I feel like I need to vote with my wallet. Because I don't like the idea that I don't like the idea that there's DLC that I can't access unless I buy a physical product, and then they will not give me an alternative way to get it. It's just shady as fuck.
I agree with you, and you know what? We're already over, so I'm going to go for broke too. I have feelings about the Amiibos. And Pat, you've already heard these feelings.
Yes.
They are absolutely wretched from an environmental standpoint. Why? I would like to have the downloadable content as well. Why can I not buy the code, buy this digitally? I do not want the piece of plastic shit made by child labor in frickin' China on cardboard that's been mined from boreal trees or something like that in Russia, and then packaged in plastic, shipped over using tons of diesel, polluting the air. There's enough things that I do that are environmentally unfriendly. I don't want to do this one. I would love to have these digitally where I could just use the codes. It's really not like Skylanders where you could swap them around. You know, those, I guess you could do it digitally. It's deplorable. I will not buy a single one of them because I do have to vote with my checkbook somewhere. And this is where the line gets drawn with me. And then all the nonsense that's come out since, and oh, by the way, the yarn Yoshis that are coming, damn them, because I do want to get one because they're kind of cool. Damn them. But I won't. And
hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, you went silent there. I think Nintendo was silencing you.
Were they now? Okay.
We're almost got Brandon back, I think.
Oh,
okay.
We lose everybody?
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't get to hear my rant? Darn.
We got a good chunk of it.
But yeah, I'm with you, Theresa. I don't understand why they couldn't offer a secondary option. I mean, because the thing is, the people that want to buy those things are going to buy them, but the people that are like you that might be like, I want this, I want the DLC, but I don't need the physical part of it. What again? Why didn't they think of this?
Yeah. It's just,
I think they did think of it.
Maybe they did.
They just didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah. They thought it might undermine sales of the figures. They thought it might.
But here's the problem with that. If they thought it might undermine the sales, they're having to pay to have those figures manufactured.
Yeah.
They're not having to pay for shit if they just have the DLC out there besides servers.
Okay.
Yeah. And knowing all of the Oh, the human rights issues with the places that these things are being manufactured, the pollution, because, these people are way behind. They don't have OSHA, they don't have, all these other regulations in check. And there's probably bits of plastic going into the drinking water in their rivers. I need to stop because that's really not what, it's not supposed to be what gaming is about, but we do have to be cognizant that every purchase we make has an impact.
Yeah.
Not just gaming.
Yeah.
And buying it all digitally, Steam is like, I don't know, they're a hippie love child.
Well, I of course would argue that voting with your wallet doesn't really work in the long run. It's the whole system of capitalism itself that's the problem, but that's for another time. So
the big problem with voting with your wallet in this instance is that even though we would vote with our wallets, there in particular with Amiibos, there are scalpers out there that are going to buy the shit anyways just so they can flip it. And capitalism, whatever, it doesn't really matter. The fact is that they're still getting sold. And I guess for me, like, I guess I would look at it from a company standpoint of, I'm not actually servicing, my actual fans. And maybe that's a stupid way for me to look at it because obviously Nintendo doesn't give a shit because they're selling the stuff regardless. And they were in desperate need of money. So, part of me also wonders if the reason that we probably won't see reprints or anything else like that is because what they're doing is they're galvanizing a section of the market that went, I'll pick these up maybe when I feel like it. They're turning around and they're creating a frenzy and they're going, okay, I couldn't get the stuff that I wanted before, so I'm going to fucking camp out and do whatever the fuck I got to do to get this next wave. And whereas they might have only bought one or two of the next wave, the idea that there might be a rarity involved means that they'll buy the next 4 or 5 rather than the 2 of the figures that they actually wanted.
I think you're right. I think they knew exactly what they were doing by...
Yeah.
Well, the first shortage may have been, we just want to test
First shortage might have been ignorance.
The rest is intentional.
Yeah.
And that's also kind of cruel too, screwing around with people that way, especially people who really have that collecting gene.
Yeah,
that's kind of nasty.
And I wonder how much of the player base comes from more of a standpoint that I represent, which is like, this is something that I think on a very basic level is pretty cool. And it's something that I would consider buying into if any amiibo that I actually wanted to get was always readily available for the MSRP. But the fact that there's a rarity involved, there's more of an investment involved in it than simply going to the store and buying it. There's the time investment, there's the energy, and
you basically
excess
have
money.
You have to
has caused me to take my ball and go home. I'm not going to be a party to it.
Yeah, you essentially, if you know something's coming out that you're going to want, like, we talked about this with Fire Emblem. I know for years you and I have been Fire Emblem fans where a lot of Americans aren't. And obviously Nintendo thought the same thing when they short produced people like Marth and the rest of the Fire Emblem characters. Even look at what they did with Shulk from Xenosaga. There are obviously hundreds of thousands of people that are fans of that game, but it really wasn't readily available to anyone at all up until the 3DS release. So they shorted that character too. And it's just really difficult for me to feel like, because that's the other part of this that feels dirty to me, is that Nintendo is a company that only makes video games. They're not like Sony. They're not like Microsoft. They have their hands in one.
No, that's not exactly true. They do produce other things besides video games, but video games are their primary market.
They have nothing in their pocket in the way that Sony or Microsoft does. They don't. If Nintendo stopped making video games today, they would end up like Sega. If Sony or Microsoft stopped, they have other things that they can do. And that's a key difference between those companies. And that to the point that I'm going to make, what frustrates me about this and what doesn't make any sense to me, at least from a business perspective, is Fire Emblem sold incredibly well. There were weeks and weeks where people were not able to get a copy because as soon as the copies came in, they sold out. Nintendo obviously feels like there's a future with Fire Emblem as far as the United States, based on the games that they have coming out, based on the inclusion of the Fire Emblem characters in Super Smash Brothers, and just what they're trying to do going forward. Nintendo thrives on whether or not their IPs are successful. So when you have a component of those IPs that you put out into the public in terms of a product, like an Amiibo, where you do an action figure or something else like that, aren't you also just shooting yourself in the foot as far as brand awareness for that particular game if those things are not readily available? That's just stupid.
Yep.
And that's the thing that I can't fathom, because they were like, yeah, there'll always be, Mario and Luigi. You can't even fucking find some Luigis now. And those are their main characters. I mean, it's baffling to me how they've handled it, and the only conclusion that I can come to is beyond the first wave. The first wave, I think they just truly didn't know how the marketplace would handle it, and I think that that's excusable. But everything else afterwards has been pure market manipulation. That I honestly would have to wonder if Yamuchi would roll over in his grave seeing this stuff, because I feel like it's completely exploitative. And what's worse is that I don't think it's doing them any favors in the long run. Because I like me personally, I will now look at anything that they do in this vein with sheer skepticism. Other people might go, man, if they're going to launch something else like this, based on that whole collector's mentality, I gotta get everything. And people are going to be spending money that they really don't need to spend and shit like that. And Nintendo's going to make that money. But for people like me, for people like you, Pat, and people like you, Theresa, I think we're all people that would have readily bought into something like this. I could even deal with characters being rare if they were up front and said, look, this production run, this one particular character is going to be produced less. So if you do want it, pre-order it and we'll make sure those orders get filled. But they can't even do that. Everybody's pre-orders and shit are getting canceled. So it just purely reeks to me of them going, we're going to create an artificial scarcity. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if when the Amiibos finally die down, if all of a sudden you see like Marth and other rare characters get reprinted just to get people to go out to the store and buy them again.
Yeah.
And if that happens, I'm completely done.
Yep.
Because they could do if they wanted to have an element of rarity involved, just re-release some of the rare characters later on in different poses.
Yeah, or different colors.
Yeah.
I mean, there's options. I mean, don't forget, we're talking about, particularly with the first couple of waves, they're all based on Smash. And, the characters in Smash, depending on what you pick them, have different colors. So, I mean, that's not an issue. It's just, and that's the other thing.
And that would be another way for Nintendo to profit off of this if they were smart about it.
Yeah.
Right, because the core DLC wouldn't change. Like, for someone like me, I wouldn't really give a shit if Marth was dressed in red or if he was dressed in blue. That doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is the component, the DLC behind it, particularly as it relates to playing with my kid. So I wouldn't care if he was a different shade, as long as the base product still provided me with what I wanted.
Yeah.
But they're not even doing that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Okay.
Man, everything sucks.
Yeah.
So, one last story to wrap up the show on.
Two, actually.
Because I'm sure we're just about hitting the 3-hour mark at this point.
Yes, we're a giant bombcast length at this point.
Yeah. Good show, though, I would say.
Yeah.
But Phil Spencer, we're in the lead up to E3 now for sure. Says the E3 conference will be less about, will be more about exclusives and first party. They're kind of shuffling the multi-platform stuff out of their show, which I think is smart. It always kind of baffled me why any of the big three would waste E3 showtime on non-exclusives. And also a sort of classy move on the side of that, congratulated Sony and From Software on Bloodborne, citing how hard it is to get a new IP off the ground as well as Bloodborne has been.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. How much is that thing sold so far?
they're over the 1 million mark right now.
Yeah. Wow, really? That quick?
Yep.
Wow. And people thought that Demon Souls wouldn't sell at all when it came out.
Yeah, boy, were they
I
wrong.
still remember all the petitions to even get it over here.
Yeah. So yeah, when their E3 keynote comes around, hopefully we don't see any stuff like, Black Ops 2 or next Battlefield, Blops 3, rather.
Yeah, I mean, all they were doing with stuff like that was essentially going, we'll have the DLC first, which didn't... I get that from the, from that standpoint of appealing to that fan base that's going to buy those packs anyway.
Yeah.
But it always did baffle me that you would take that time to go, here's the stuff that's exactly the same on the other platform.
Yeah.
And dedicating a good chunk of their show to it.
Yep.
And the punchline being that these are largely major third parties that have their own E3 press conferences as well, and will be showcasing the games there. It's a complete waste.
Yeah. So maybe we'll see 15 minutes of Battletoads. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind that.
I would
at
not
all.
mind that at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going to see something Battletoads, I'm sure.
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll also see some, playable Crackdown. That would be nice.
Yeah. Killer Instinct Season 3.
Yeah, Killer Instinct Season 3. We'll find out what the bonus is going to be for that one, if there is any.
And I'm sure we'll be force-fed a good chunk of Halo 5.
Yeah.
Probably. Halo 5. Yeah, we already talked about Square Enix, so we'll probably get some Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts action.
Yeah, although those being...
Oh, we're
trying to
talking
think
about the Microsoft show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Figure out what's going on with Phantom Dust.
Yeah.
That's a weird situation. Microsoft insists they're going forward with it.
Yeah. So, still a thing, apparently.
But yeah, this is a trend I hope to see Sony reciprocate on, because a lot of the major third parties have their own E3 press conferences, and so I'd much rather see the big three focusing on their exclusives, their first parties, stuff that they personally can hang their hats on, the way it used to be.
Yeah. It would also make for a shorter show, because, we don't really need a 3-hour keynote.
Yeah.
Like Sony last year.
That being said, if they still went out and got enough to talk about for that much time, I'd certainly be happy.
Yeah, and if they could spend 3 hours talking about all the first party stuff they've got, then they're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Microsoft actually being behind might be a decent thing. I mean, they went from being a company that was obviously they were very much Sony circa 2005 when the PlayStation 3 was announced, and they were like, or 2006. And Sony just thought, yeah, Sony just thought they were fucking untouchable, and Microsoft obviously thought the same thing, and the backlash was so severe.
And we just dropped again.
Oh no!
Oh man!
It just ticked up.
Okay. They lost though. Yeah. I mean, I don't even think they'll be able to do a Sony style recovery because of so much of the hardware is baked into doing other things than video games. And it's a less powerful console than the PS3, and for the most part, I mean, we've all seen, or for the PS4, we've all seen that power really doesn't matter when the sales figures are skewed heavily in one direction. Like the DS was obviously less powerful than the PSP, but the DS got all of the games because of its install base. The PSP had some great games too, not to deride that. PS2 as well. I mean, the install base in that was so absolutely, like, ferociously enormous that people put everything on it, even though the Xbox and the GameCube were both more powerful. This is a little bit of a flip in the sense that Sony sort of won the marketing war, and
they did it with more powerful hardware. If Microsoft had flipped the script and been kind of like Sony had been out the gate, we could have been seeing a very different thing. But all they did was just tell people, no, we're going to give you exactly what we think we should give you, and you're going to fucking like it. And it completely bit them in the ass. And, you know, I don't know, frankly, they fucking deserve it. I mean, they designed that console in a goddamn boardroom. And,
yep, pretty much.
And it shows. So, you know, I would hope they get a little more neck and neck, simply because I'm from the generation where we had the Super Nintendo and the Genesis just completely on top of each other and just fighting for every tooth and, you know, or for every gain that they could, fighting tooth and nail. And I think that's
I'm glad the acrimony's not there this time, though.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. I think that makes a huge difference too. And because I really think some of the stuff from the previous generation actually got pretty ugly. So, you know, but yeah, they really screwed the pooch. And I think that they won't be able to pull a Sony-style comeback at the end because they went so far off the reservation. Sony insulted everybody with their price point. Microsoft insulted everybody at the base level and just basically went like, you know, everything that we're doing, you're going to fucking like, and we're going to shove all this shit on you and fuck you. And, you know, that's why they are where they are. So I hope Microsoft keeps trying to pull it out though, because that's only going to make Sony try and do the same.
Yeah,
and I think that's great for the industry
and I think
as well.
Phil Spencer's done a great job so far.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm of the opinion that anyone, even a company, can make mistakes as long as they learn from them. And from what I've seen from the Xbox division so far, Halo Master Chief Collection notwithstanding, they have learned from those mistakes.
Yes.
They decoupled Kinect. They freed up the CPU core that Kinect was using.
They've cut the price down as hard as they possibly can.
Yeah, there was. I don't know if you caught it. There was a crazy.
As well as they can.
Yeah, they had I think GameStop had a crazy deal this weekend. You can get an Xbox One for $225.
Whoa! I didn't hear about that.
Doubt it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's only lasted 1 weekend.
Yeah, we had some pretty. When I was working over at GameStop over the holidays, they slashed prices pretty good over there.
Yeah.
So
well, they need to do. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, but see, at least they're also focusing on that point to try and be competitive. So I think that's going to be the other thing this year. If they can really pull out some stuff that says this stuff is only going to be on Xbox, and you know. And really kind of drive that point home, because I really do. I stick to what I said previously. I think that they did lose a huge swath of customers with the fuck up that was the Master Chief Collection. I think people would have been willing to forgive them up until that point.
Yeah.
Where, you know, they basically released a game that took 5 actual months to become functional. And I think that was a terrible mistake. And I think it really, because say what you want about Sony doing what they did with the PS3. They didn't. Uncharted and all that other stuff didn't come out broken as fuck.
Yeah.
You know, and Sony was able to turn it around at the time based on
the price point notwithstanding. The system was still extremely palatable.
Yeah.
Exactly, and I wonder if that's the case as well for the Xbox One, because yeah, there are great games on it right now to play, but like I think the UI is worse than what we had before with the 360. It lacks certain basic functions that the 360 had. But then it also does some other stuff, like the fact that you can just plug a hard drive into it. I feel like that's so much better than having to take apart your PS3 and put another hard drive in it because you ran out of space.
Yeah.
The controller is fantastic. You know, there are some pluses to it. Xbox Live, I still think is more stable than PSN.
Yeah.
The suspend feature was really awesome, and of course Sony finally has that as well. So I mean, there's stuff, but it's not games, and that's really what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've only got a little under 2 months.
I think we got a show.
Yeah. Have a show. What a show! Like we're almost at the 3-hour mark here. Alrighty.
Aren't you gonna have fun editing this thing down?
Oh, it shouldn't be that bad. Anyways, with that,
Yeah, and Phil, I'm gonna touch base with you this week as well about that because I found out the information that we need to put this stuff on iTunes. So let's see if we can figure out a way to make that happen.
Oh yeah,
sure, I'll get that done. I'm just waiting for some artwork to get in here.
Yeah, we need to just start doing some. We need to start promoting this thing on Reddit too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, Reddit, NeoGAF, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Phil, I got you on Facebook. I'll touch base with you and see if we can figure it out. If we need artwork, what kind of artwork do we need? Do we need like a logo or something? Because I think we could probably just submit the Smashpad logo and they would be okay. It just needs to be a certain DPI, I believe.
Yeah, it's
PPI.
Yeah, I know dimensions and all that. I just have I have an artist who's apparently working on some stuff for us. Hopefully that'll come in soon.
Okay.
But yeah,
Sounds
we'll talk to you over the week.
Yeah, because we can start pimping this hard, and I think we'd be. I think we'd do pretty well.
Yeah,
definitely.
All right.
All right. Well, with that, I'm Filippo D'Onofrio.
I'm Patrick Meslin.
I'm Brandon Perkins.
I'm Leigh Lamb.
And I'm Theresa Sammons.
And we'll see you guys next week.